come a little closer and lend me your ears. Don't worry, you keep yours while I keep mine.
In each episode, we'll dig into the major stories, uncover the truth, and retrieve gems from Yada's blog.
We'll discuss what's right, bark about what's wrong, wag our tails at the thrill of discovery, and take you on adventures through the exciting world we live in today. So, fasten your curiosity leash and get ready. Right then, coming to you with another episode of the Yada's Vlog on a Blog. Tomorrow's news, disseminated today. Let's dive in.
Hey, well, welcome to the Vlog on the Vlog. We have a special guest, JB. You're new to the Vlog on the Vlog, but we are not new together.
Yep.
We have been communicating and working together for, God, it's got to be pretty close to 20 years, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's been a minute.
Yeah, it's been a long time. And you are one of many who heard, I think, me speak on, I did like 10,000 talk radio interviews over the years, virtually every syndicated program. And then had my own syndicated program for 5 or 6 years called Shattering Myths. And you heard me on the radio at some time, I would imagine.
Yeah, actually, it wasn't a syndicated program. It was a very local radio host. I love David Gold, which I missed because he was a very good conservative, not Republican, but you know, he was a great host, and yeah, he had you on, and I was literally mopping the floors at the restaurant I worked at while I listened to you on there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you know, if conservatism were not linked to the Republican Party, I think we could all be conservatives in the sense of less government intrusion into people's lives, more personal responsibility, greater opportunity for free enterprise, less taxation, less military, less war, more freedom. We would all tend to want to conserve, which is to have less of government intervention in people's lives.
Thomas Jefferson said, "The government that governs least governs best."
Yes, and that, from a conservative point of view, I would agree with that, and I could easily be in fact, I would say that I'm way too conservative now to be a Republican, and have been so for a long time. Republican Party, of course, is way too religious, and this reptile here, he did my Donald Trump interpretation. I don't know if I got it right, but at least it was as an effort. It's just pathetic. But the MAGAs have completely taken over the Republican Party, so there's nothing left of it other than the reptilian overlord here. But at least, they got one conspiracy theory right after all this time. Reptilian overlords.
Who would have thought?
Who would have thought they'd have gotten that one right? They managed to do it. So I was on David Gold, huh? And that was, you were sometime in the Dallas area. Was that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And what was it that caught your attention?
Well, yeah, everything was after 9/11. So, I was fairly interested in Islam. I worked for a Muslim family, actually. The restaurant I worked at was run by a Jordanian family who were really good people. But I'd been studying a little bit on Islam ever since 9/11, trying to understand, is it the religion? Is it the extremist? Or, how all that worked. And like I said, I was listening to that. I was very, I've never been very religious, but I was very political. Although not in the sense of like a party, because only election I voted on a president, I did not, thank God, I did not vote for George W. Bush, because 2000 was the first election I could vote for a president. I voted for the Libertarians.
Okay. And once upon a time, the Libertarians really had the right answer, which was to liberate us from government tyranny. Less government involvement in our lives.
The Libertarian Party is split between two things, and very intelligent people who want to do things right, and people who just want to smoke weed.
Well, yeah,
there's a lot of. What it goes down to. It's like you got the intellectual libertarians and you got the legalizing part, which I'm all for legalizing. I've never smoked weed in my life, don't have any interest in it, but I'm 100% for legalizing because prohibition doesn't work and it's stupid. And well, honestly, look at any study, marijuana is safer than alcohol. Which,
the fact of the matter is that marijuana is probably medicinal and has so many benefits. It's actually recommended in the Torah. Speaks specifically of hemp. But in my view is that if you're going to go with the libertarian approach or conservatism, all things ought to be free. All things are not good. A society that has some cost or consequence of things that are not good for you, but still makes everything available to you, is much better than a society that tries to restrict every aspect of your life. Prohibition did not work. And so any law against marijuana, in my view, is religious and political paranoia and ultimately stupid. I actually moved to an island where I think marijuana is more prevalent than water. Well, not salt water, but fresh water, perhaps. About a 90% usage rate. I don't personally smoke marijuana. I've been around it most of my adult life since college. I actually like the smell of it. It just does nothing for me. And you just you choose the kinds of things that you're going to do in your life that might dull your thought processes for a period of time. And about the furthest I'm going to go is I'll have a beer about once a month and a glass of wine with dinner several nights a week, and maybe when I go to a restaurant, an occasional Mai Tai or well, I haven't had a Mai Tai probably in 10 years, but a margarita. And so, that's about as far as I'm going to go. It's just a matter of choice. Life is a challenge, and you want to have your wits about you. And any drug, and marijuana is a drug, it does not have a beneficial effect on your ability to process information. It has a deteriorating effect. So, but anyway, we would both be conservatives, probably libertarians, but there is no advocacy for any kind of involvement in politics in the Torah. God is apolitical and anti-religious. So we have just followed his example, and we have opted out. It is actually a prerequisite for the covenant. It doesn't change the fact you can be conservative in your view of human governance, and you can still be non-political. When Yahowah recognized that Adam, who was his firstborn, had the potential for good and bad, but inside of the coddled environment of the garden, didn't have the opportunity to demonstrate that he could do something of value, or that he could fall and get back up, that he could be useful or reliable. And God put him out of the garden along with Chawa. And Nasalma man, which was the one thing that made Adam distinct from the other humans and other animals outside of the garden, when they became many, God says, "Oh, I regret having created," because many humans were bad humans. That we have the potential, although it is rare, to be good individually. We are always bad collectively. Now, if you take that to its natural conclusion, the more collectivized a government is, or a religious institution, the more people that are part of it, the worse it becomes from God's point of view. And if you look at the history of humanity, we would come to the same conclusion. The larger the empire, the larger the nation, the more influential the individual that is part of a religious sect or whatever, the worse they become. Even in the covenant, it's largely
horrible.
Yeah, largely in the covenant, it's a collection of individuals. One of the things that's been really interesting here is we've had so many people begin to post their own programs, or become the vlog on the vlog, or do Call Your Net Business program. Is that the overwhelming majority of people who have read my books and come to the site like you did, I did not even know for the first 10 years. And some I didn't know for upwards of 20 years. We had no correspondence, or if we had some correspondence, it was pretty minimal. You're one of the very few people that very early on you started correspondence, and you wanted to ask questions, and we would intellectually spar on issues in a very positive kind of a way. And so you were unique in that I got to know you early on, but that was rare. For the most part, people that read the books, I don't get to know for 10, 15, 20 years sometimes.
I gotta say, even then, it was probably 4 or 5 years into reading it before I reached out to you in an email. And it was only when you started writing Introduction to God and you asked for editors that we started corresponding on a regular basis.
Yes, yeah, it's true. And what it does, of course, is it completely negates the one attack that is used universally brought against me and everyone who reads these books and comes to know Yahowah, is they will all, because none can argue with the evidence and reason that we have brought. I mean, there isn't anybody that has ever had a single sane argument. Not one rational argument has ever been brought against that now almost 30,000 pages that I have written, or the tens of thousands of radio and recorded interviews I've done. I have not experienced a single, and I've answered probably 100,000 emails from people and callers online. I've not had a single person ever raise an issue that negated anything that we have said, ever. And we made a lot of controversial statements that are completely contrary to religion and politics. So they just resort to ad hominem attacks, and the ad hominem box they like to put people in to say that's a cult. But you can't have a cult if you have none of the traits of a cult. Our leader is Yahowah. I write books based upon Yahowah's testimony, not based upon my testimony. And we ask nothing from anyone. We very seldom meet. We very seldom even talk in one-on-one. We're a collection of individuals, all with the same goal, getting to know God, whose name is Yahowah, better. And all of that time, JB, asking somebody, would you like to participate in editing books is not much of a request by consider of cult standards. But have I ever asked you for any money?
No. In fact, actually, there was a period where I was very sick, and you, amongst other people in the covenant, actually sent money to me.
Yep, and that's, by the way, not uncommon. I guess we would be the dumbest cult in the history of cults, because there are many people, and I very seldom ever acknowledge this, but there are many, many, many people that I have sent money to when they were in trouble to help out. And never once have I ever received any money from anybody, ever. So, world's dumbest cult, I guess.
We're not doing it right, huh?
We're just not doing it right, pal.
Look at the definition of a cult in a dictionary, and there is literally no distinction between a cult and a religion. Literally, the only distinction between a cult and a religion is time and the amount of members.
Yeah, that's correct.
If you're new and few, you're a cult. Right. If you're old and many, you're a religion.
Yes, but that is the only difference. And we are not a religion. We're anti-religion. So there you go. Yeah. In fact, Kevin, you'd be part of this. You have fairly simple means where you live, and you are super dedicated to what we do, and to do it effectively, you have to have the tools to do it. And so when you needed a computer, we did reverse cult, didn't we?
We did reverse cult. Absolutely.
We did reverse cult. And you've seen it because you've processed it a number of times. You've seen it happen a number of times since then.
Oh, yeah.
Reverse cult. Yep. So it is pretty astonishing that people can come up with the stupidity of all that. So you found me initially. Yeah, you found me initially through my statements on Islam, because the first two books the first book I wrote was called In the Company, and it's a book about corporate America and the nature of humanity.
Actually, I did go back and read that one. That's actually a really good book. I would highly recommend to anyone.
Yeah, it really is an interesting study in human dynamics. It's actually now on the Yahowah.com website, so you can read it. It's all free. We're not asking anybody for anything. Even the books we present are entirely free. And then, so I started off by exposing and condemning Islam at Yahowah's request, and I wrote Tea with Terrorists and Prophet of Doom, which is now the 5 volumes of Goddamn Religion. Was that one of the first things that you read since you had a curiosity on what was the nature of this religion? Why did they fly planes into our building screaming Allahu Akbar? And were the terrorists corrupting their religion, or did the religion corrupt the terrorists?
Yeah, the first thing I read was, did go back and eventually read in The Company, which was, The Company of Good and Evil, which actually is a well done fictional novel.
It is. Yeah, it's a nonfiction novel in The Company. Tea with Terrorists is a fiction. Yeah, is written. Both are written in the style of a novel. In The Company is written in the form of Moby Dick. I had a mentor at the time that taught me how to write. I had been a businessman prior to that, and he was the second employee of my previous company. And when I had left it, he taught me how to write, and he says, we're going to start in the single most difficult style, and if you can master this style, you'll be able to write anything you want. And he says, first, the most difficult thing for any author to write is dialogue. Writing credible dialogue is exceedingly difficult. And now we're going to double down on that. We're going to have you write dialogue with a first-person, non-omniscient narrator. So the narrator is going to be an actual participant in the story. It's like Moby Dick. Call me Ishmael. Ishmael was a minor character in the story, and the whole story is told from Ishmael's point of view. And so he does not know what's going to happen. He doesn't know what other people are thinking. All he can do is explain what he is perceiving is happening around him. And so I wrote in The Company from the perspective of a fellow, he was a really good friend, he's since passed away, called Ken Power. And so everybody thought, because I put Ken Power's name first and the like, that Ken Power wrote the book. But no, his contribution to the book is he taught me how to write. And that's how In the Company came into existence. It is really an amazing read, though, because everything in that story is true. So I just told it from the point of view of a first-person narrator and in dialogue, because I thought it'd make it a more interesting read, and it was just a challenge that I wanted to undertake. The next story was Tea with Terrorists. And, I wish I knew now what I knew, or I wish I knew then what I knew now, and I would have written Tea with Terrorists a lot differently. But Tea with Terrorists was written to be a novel, so to draw people in, because I thought they'd be more likely to read a novel that you go on a journey of discovery to do exactly what you were looking for. Why did they fly planes into the buildings? Did the terrorists corrupt their religion, as everyone claimed, or did the religion corrupt them? And the center chapter of that book is I actually went into Israel and I met with Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, and Hamas, and asked them directly why they did this thing. And it's the answer to those questions that was the title chapter around which Tea with Terrorists was written. And so that was also an interesting experience. And then, of course, from that point on, I started the format that I'm using now, which is we're going to explore the original texts of the religions or institution that we're going to expose. And all I'm going to do is create the most accurate analysis of the history of that text, so you know when it emerged, how well it has survived transmission over time, so that you know the nature of the language that it was written in, so that you know the very nature of the people who wrote it. And then we're going to go to the oldest extant manuscripts and we're going to do something that heretofore hadn't been done. We're going to put everything in chronological order, set it into the context of the lives of the people that are conveying it, and then analyze it under the auspices of the rules of logic. And when you do that, the Torah comes out supreme. And Christian New Testament is completely trashed. The Quran is completely trashed, and there are the books that underlie rabbinical Judaism are completely trashed. So it's the Torah that survives that scrutiny, and the rest fail. So when you started reading, just a few more questions. When you started reading Prophet of Doom, what was your? Because that now goes back 22 years, I think. Or 23 years, maybe. What was your impression of the writing style, the diligence, the whole approach, the standard operating procedure that created that book?
I loved the approach. It was very analytical. My first thing was, okay, so what translations is he using versus what your average? So I literally went to the people I work with, like I said, who were Muslim, and I asked them, what English translation would you recommend? If I wanted to study the Quran. And so I went and bought that. So I would compare what your the translations you were presenting in Prophet of Doom to the one they recommended. And by and large, they were practically the same. I mean, word or two here and there, and the basic differences between translations, but the message was the same. And the presentation was the same.
Yeah. Actually, when I wrote Prophet of Doom, I decided to write it with 5 translations.
Yeah.
And so almost every passage that I cited from the Quran, and I covered about 70% of the Quran in Prophet of Doom, and I presented 5 translations of it. And the 5 translations that I used were the most popular in the world, which is the one that's published by Saudi Arabia and sent free to places around the world. And it's the most literal. And then the most paraphrased, the most popular in America because it's written and it's like kind of the new international version of the Quran. I included that because it's the most modern, upbeat translation. It tries to make Islam look good. And then I took the 3 most scholastically acclaimed translations, and I wrote Prophet of Doom saying the reason I'm not using one is I don't want to be accused of cherry picking, from the worst of something and somebody has another one. I'm going to give you 5 translations every time I quote it. And now in Goddamn Religion, one of the reasons it went to 4,200 pages and 5 volumes is I not only provide those same 5 translations throughout, but now I augment that with my own translation. Since I wrote that, Muslims have tried to copy the tools that are used to study Hebrew and Greek. And so they have now interlinears, and they have all manner of textual support where you can use an interlinear, click on the word, it'll give you the root, and subsequently, I learned that almost every word in the Quran is actually bastardized Hebrew. And so if you understand Hebrew, you'll know the Quran better than most Muslims. But now in Goddamn Religion, I have my own translation, and I validate the conclusions. And on the passages that are the most meaningful, the most important in the Quran, I will provide sometimes 20 translations. And I have access to a site that has some 70 of them, and I'll give people as many as 20 of them just to validate a point. And the other thing that caused Goddamn Religion to be a lot longer is that now, rather than covering some 70% of the Quran, I cover every verse of every surah of the Quran. And I take them all and I put them all in chronological order, and I set them all into the context of Muhammad's life. It's the most irrefutable, comprehensive, undeniable refutation of Islam ever written, because the entire refutation of Islam is based upon Muhammad's and Allah's own words and deeds.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it was irritating because I used to listen to you on a lot of radio programs debating about Islam. And the single biggest one that everyone comes up with is, well, his translations are wrong. And you're like, it's not my translations. I'm using all of these.
Yeah.
But that was what they would go to, is like, oh, well, his translation of the Quran is wrong.
Yeah. And of course, in Prophet of Doom, I did not have my own translation.
Yeah.
In Prophet of Doom, I relied on the 5 most popular and most scholastically acclaimed translations of the Quran. And by the way, even if a Muslim says, well, the Quran is only meant to be read in Arabic, the Arabic of the Quran cannot be read by any Arabic-speaking person. No, it's as different as, in fact, more different than Italian would be from Latin. They're not the same language. And so every Arab-speaking person today must have the Quran translated into modern standard Arabic, very different language. And what you find is the Quran is the same thing as the Christian New Testament. The words are rendered very often based upon their context, as opposed in the sentence, as opposed to the actual root meaning of the words. So most people haven't a clue what the words actually say. But for the first 20 years that book existed before I rewrote it, I did not even have my own translation in it. I only had the others. When I went back to write it, after I had written 35 other books and had spent my adult life translating Hebrew and coming up with a very systematic means to do it, and really, I don't think anyone's ever come close to the approach that I use in translating the Torah, prophets, and Psalms, that I've developed a lot of credibility and sophistication as it relates to Hebrew. And then you realize that the Quran is largely Talmud stories that the rabbis sold Muhammad, and everything in the Quran is Hebrew, including Quran. It's from Qara, to read and recite. And when you do that, like kafir, the name that is used to slur non-Muslims, it is from the Hebrew word kafar, and it means to cover, to purge, to reconcile, and so it's the people that Allah is screaming against are the very people that Yahowah has valued and has redeemed. And so you just learn all sorts of things when you know the source of those stories, how they came out of the Talmud, and how rabbis sold them to them. And you read things like my Lord and Hebrew would be Adonai, but that's not how it reads in the Quran. It reads rabbi in the Quran, and it's just one of many proofs that it was the rabbis who conned Muhammad, and they wrote the Quran. So now I do have my own translation, in addition to anywhere from 5 others minimal to as many as 30 and 40 for some passages. So yeah, the book is just absolutely irrefutable. That's initially when I was answering emails to Prophet of Doom, and received tens of thousands of death threats. In doing it, I never had anyone come up with a single viable argument against anything that I said. And to disprove Prophet of Doom, now goddamn religion, you'd have to refute every page, because every page is condemning of the religion.
Yeah.
It also goes to show, if you're going to have a viable debate, the moderator needs to be educated, because that was the biggest problem on every radio show I ever listened to you on Prophet of Doom, was the host was not educated. And so they would make stupid claims like that. Like, well, he's saying this. Well, that doesn't matter. You should know that that's not a valid argument. Right. That's what the moderator needs to do.
Right. Yeah. And that was universal throughout all of that process, is that for a period of 10 years, I was the only person on talk radio and television, I did a lot of television too, who actually knew the religion better than any Muslim knew the religion, and could expose and condemn the reasons for Islamic terrorism factually based upon what Muhammad and Allah had said and done. And I almost universally spoke to an ignorant audience, and was hosted by an ignorant host. That didn't mean that the host was bad. Most of them were actually quite good. They wanted to convey a message. And so long as I was the one taking the hit for saying things that got somebody killed, in most circumstances, they were willing for me to say it. They would typically go out of their way to say, he said it, I didn't say it, so that they didn't themselves get death threats. And that was fine with me. I didn't understand it. Why would somebody want to put themselves in a position to get death threats unless you were absolutely convinced that not only what you're saying was right, but that God himself wanted you to say it. And we went from that to, wasn't very much thereafter that I wrote the first book. It was based upon a Zob. It was a translation of Hosea. That goes back probably 19 years ago. Would have followed Prophet of Doom.
Yeah, that was literally like I was on Prophet of Doom checking on something because I was reading it through probably for the second or third time, and I happened to notice a link up in the corner said Yada Yahweh. And I'm like, but what's this book about?
What's this book about?
Enjoyed this. This has been informative. What's he got to say here?
Yes. Yeah, I thought that, it's not what I thought. I'm sure it's what Yahowah thought. He wanted me to expose who he is not and to protect his people by excoriating Islam as the first thing we did. But if you take that same discipline of scrutinizing the original text and drawing conclusions based upon the original text, and you take it into the Torah and prophets, that approach, a standard operating procedure, as they would call it, really worked, and I thought it built on credibility. For somebody to go and scrutinize the Torah and prophets after having eviscerated, Islam. That's no one's ever done that. What an interesting approach. People are either anti-religion and they're going to destroy all religions, which is fine with me. All religions are terrible, but they would never ever think to vindicate Yahowah in the Torah, that approach had just never been done before.
Well, and they typically don't try to destroy religion. They attack God. They just associate God with religion, and they throw them all out.
I've never seen an atheist ever that attacked God based upon who God is. They always attack God by how the religions portray him. As such, that makes him an easy target because the religions are stupid. I mean, Christianity, God becomes a man. Men can kill God. Your founder of your religion is supposed to be God, but he can't write. Come on. I mean, the whole thing in bodily resurrection, you're going back to the Egyptians, and your whole religion is based upon the same pagan myths that the Romans and the Greeks all venerated. I mean, come on, it's so easy to.
That was the lesson that Yahowah taught me, was to separate God from religion, because I had rejected God because I rejected religions, and the idea that God was anti-religious never occurred to me.
That's true.
So it was just.
I'm sure I'm the first person.
There may be a God, but I don't know, and I don't know that you can know him. But the idea that you could know God without being a part of a religion was something I had never considered.
Yeah, I'm certain that among the tens of thousands of profound insights, unheralded insights in these books that we have made free at yahowah.com. The fact that God is anti-religious, goddamn religion, is one of them. No one prior to this presentation ever considered the fact that God was not only not religious and that you could not know him through religion, but that he absolutely rejected religion, and that the prerequisite for forming a relationship with him is for you to walk away from religion. And I know that's, even though it's very clear in the Torah and the prophets, no one had ever conveyed that. And so the atheist and agnostic arguments against God were all based upon criticizing the religious God.
Yep.
You were in that group, because I know one of the first things that resonated with you is when I'm translating the book of Hosea. There it was as plain as day that there are three outcomes for a human soul, and that the vast majority of souls simply die, which means they dissipate into nothing at their mortality, and that very few souls, very, very few, actually muster up to the standard that God's looking for, where he will incorporate them into his covenant. And Relatively few, maybe a fraction of 1%, rise to the level that they are corrupting other people or abusing his people to the extent that they get sent to Sheol. So rather than God saying, you'll either love me and obey me, or I'm going to torture you forever in hell, which is the religious interpretation, and every religion is essentially that, I came up with the conclusion, no, what God is saying is, if you choose to reject me, you choose to ignore me, you choose to be religious or political in defiance of the instructions that I've given you, then I have given you life, I have given you free will, I've given you an asama for you to think intelligently. And if you don't use those things during your life to get to know what I'm offering and what I expect in return, then at the end of your life, your soul is simply going to dissipate into nothingness. There is no reward, there is no punishment. Totally and completely fair. And if you're going to make a living misleading people like pastors and like doofus here, then at the end of your mortal existence, there has to be recompense for you committing what is essentially spiritually murder. And I'm going to hold you accountable. I've got a place for your soul. It's called Sheol. It's no torture there, no fires. It's eternal separation. It's the antithesis of the Islamic hell, which is physical bodies and Allah's presence torturing people in their physical bodies forever. So the hell from God's point of view is called Sheol. It's akin to a black hole, eternal in time and no other dimension, lightless place of total separation. And if you adhere to the terms and conditions of the covenant, attend the Moed Mikre as they were laid out, come to have an appreciation for who Yahweh is and how he has worked to enable this covenant, and demonstrate to him that you are trustworthy, sufficiently trustworthy that he can take you out of 3D land here on earth and empower you to explore the universe with him, then that is your option. So I'm quite certain that was not only one of the oldest and earliest profoundly important conclusions we had come to, but very unique. No one in all of human history had been able to deduce that from Yah's story. And I know it had considerable influence on you. Yeah, I think you were one of those who said, wow, that's really insight. That makes all the difference in the world.
That was definitely, for me, the initial draw was the scientific stuff, the creation of the universe, the timeline. That really drew me in. But yeah, that was like one of my biggest objections to virtually all religions was the heaven-hell dichotomy, which is carrot and stick approach, and I'm not behind coercion. So that was one of the earliest things, that drew me in was this idea that there is other options.
The second book that I wrote, JB, was In the Beginning. It was volume 1 of what became Yahowah series. There's now 9 volumes in that series. And in volume 1, we decided we would go through everything that was part of the creation account. And the very first thing that we came to recognize, and it was, we were helped by unfortunately, the guy is a Kabbalahist and a rabbi, but a scientist named Schroeder, I think is his
Gerald
name.
Schroeder.
Yeah.
And before I even found Yahowah, I was reading Gerald Schroeder's Hidden Face of God and The Science of God. Great books for the science aspects.
Yeah, as far as they go. And he was, I think, the first that realized that because of relativity, time, when it's presented at 14 billion years since what we now know are the Big Bangs, plural, to this point of view, would have been a much shorter period of time, and that, well, he never did the math actually, and didn't speak much of quark confinement or what the tools were to get there. He at least laid the seed that relativity would indicate that 6 24-hour days in creation, from the point of view of someone telling the story from creation, is very close to the scientific evaluation of how old the universe is. And so I took that grain and began to study what is quark confinement, how they came up with the temperature for quark confinement, how there's 3 different ranges. They took an extreme range, and it's probably the middle range is going to be accurate. And now with the Webb telescope, I feel venerated because there's galaxies and stars that exceed the age of the universe. And so rather than using 13.8, I said it's got to be between 14 and 15. My guess is it's very close to 15 billion years, and we will refine the temperature of quark confinement, and we will recognize that we're not seeing the edge of the universe at this point. And we get better telescopes. We'll look further back in time, and the universe is going to turn out to be closer to 15 billion years. So I did that analysis, and then I did every analysis that you could use, from redshift to star evolution, and the analysis of what we knew at the time, and also of relativity, to say, okay, now I've given you a huge foundation. Now that I've given you this foundation, I'm going to do the math for you. And I took, I went between 14 and 15 billion years. I said, okay, we'll take that. We'll multiply that by years by days from Earth time, because that 14 billion years is calibrated on Earth time, and at creation, Earth didn't exist. We have a 3rd generation star that we're around, and so our planet is 4.5 billion years old, and so the universe is probably 15 billion years old. So you can't use Earth time to calibrate the genesis of the universe. So I said, all right, but we'll go back, and because we're calibrating this in Earth days, and I did the math to put it into days, and talked about what the Wilkinson probe had deduced from the cosmic microwave radiation that is still emanating from what we had thought at one time was a Big Bang. Now we know it is Big Bangs, plural. But it's I think it's 2.73 degrees Kelvin. And when you look at the wavelength from that, you know that time was stretched by 10 to the 12th power in the proximity of such enormous energy and velocity that would have occurred at the Big Bang, and that would gradually dissipate over time as things moved out from those central points. So a witness to creation, or someone who was actually the creator, would have perceived let's use 15 billion years, that the universe is old. When you divide that by 10 to the 12th power, it is exactly 6 24-hour days. And so the 6 24-hour days that of creation and the 15 billion year age of the universe are exactly the same.
Well, and then you broke it down into the epochs of what each day, how long that was, and what happened, what Yahowah said happened during that day. It perfectly matches what actually happened.
It perfectly matched to the degree we knew at the time. I know I wrote that book now 20 years ago, 18 to 20 years ago. And subsequently, there are things like a discussion in the second day of enormous amounts of water serving as the nurseries for stars. And there was some indication at the time that we were beginning to find large reservoirs of water in the cosmos. And then science was moving towards, they seem to be the nursery for stars in these enormous reservoirs of water. And subsequently, we have found that they are ubiquitous throughout the universe, and that they are the nursery for stars, and that the second day depiction of water as such is absolutely true. And so if I were to rewrite it now, I would have probably 10 times the ammunition that I had 18 years ago. But still, at 18 years ago, even now, here you're talking about it, and you remember those correlations of the epochs, and we went right through even to plant life and then the difference between plant life and animal life with a nefesh, a consciousness, and what consciousness enabled, and the Cambrian explosion and the time of the Cambrian explosion, and the fact that the 25 phyla of animal types all came into existence at exactly the same time, which means macroevolution is a complete and utter farce, and every scientist knows it's a complete and utter farce. And also, for all of those life forms to come into existence at exactly the same time means that that's this whole notion that was originally published in Nature, that given enough time, the impossible becomes probable, and then enough time, and the probable becomes certain. Well, they've had to write a retraction on that because, well, guess what? They didn't have a lot of time. They had a very, very, very short period of time.
It was like microseconds.
So the Torah account was so insightful and so correct. And of course, it wasn't until just a couple of years ago that we went back and listen, I always knew that the fourth day was not talking about the sun and the moon. It was because there's a Hebrew word for sun and a Hebrew word for moon, shemesh and yurik, and it wasn't used. And so what we realized is that the greater and lesser luminaries originally just became visible because the carbon dioxide that was so prevalent on the Earth eventually became more oxygen rich and transparent after the creation of plant life, particularly in the oceans, did a transformative effect of consuming carbon dioxide and producing oxygen. In fact, at one point, the oxygen levels on our planet were at close to 40%. They're down at 21% now, but we had an oxygen level of about 40%, which was actually caustic to life. It's what happened in the Apollo 1 spacecraft. You get too much oxygen in the air, and a spark is like a bomb. So anyway, it transformed the atmosphere into translucent and then transparent. And so I said, that's what this is talking about. And you can go right back to the science, and yes, that's true. So what it demonstrates is that every depiction throughout creation, that whole story, is true scientifically. It's true also, though, from a spiritual teaching point of view, and nothing more important than the fourth day, where the two luminaries, the Gadol and Katan Meoreth, happen to be the two most important people in God's story. And they play roles all the way through in fulfilling the Moedim. So again, the only difference would be if we were to rewrite it now, we know maybe a millionfold what we knew back then. But some of the things, JB, we've been talking about this here a lot recently. Yahowah asked me to not go back and continue to rewrite the books. He said specifically, I want you to speak to my people. This is the time they need to hear what you have to say. You are the books. And what he also knew is that we would begin to learn at a geometric rate. Yeah, it's a hugely increased rate, and because a foundation of knowledge makes that possible. And plus, I think it's the time when I was just releasing memories and also inspired understanding. And what we can do now is we can go from inspiration to communication in a matter of minutes. Sometimes the inspiration comes in the middle of a program, and we're just going to stop the program we're doing. So we're now going to talk about, this is what I have just foreseen. This is what this means. And so God knew that was the important thing to do, and that there was enormous credibility that comes through that. But I think he also realized that people aren't reading anymore. We're part of a generation that no longer exists. It's text to speech. They even have their affairs with their AI buddy by talking to the AI buddy, and the AI buddy talking back to them. Somebody asked me the other day to do a quick recording for a text to speech thing that we're doing for the books. And I said, but I don't have a microphone on my computer. I don't use text to speech. And so, what do you mean you don't do it? We all just, computer. I said, no, I don't do that. I type. I like words. I like how they feel. I like how they look. I like how they sound. I like them. So you realize that people just don't read, and it's why X and Facebook thrive on those little short videos and images with 2 or 3 words, 4 or 5 words. You get much past 8 to 10 words, and you've zoned people out. And that's why we're doing the vlog on the vlog, is because we're going to bring you the news that you need to know, even from the reptilian overlord here, in oral format. But at this point, if I went back to try to bring, it's not just so much correct, it is to bring the books up to what we know in every area. First of all, the almost 30,000 pages would become 60,000 pages. And already it's a full year's reading. If you get donated 3 hours every night to reading, it's a full year. So we're going to make it 2 years of reading. And the other thing would be is that it would take, now with 30,000 pages, take 3 years to go through them all. And then the other issue is it's going to shortchange what we're learning, because you'd be spending all your time enhancing and incorporating what you have learned into the old books. And by the time you've got through, whatever little time you're spending, advancing what you know, you'd have to go back through and be like the Golden Gate Bridge. You have to start painting the thing all over again. And God just says, listen, they're good enough. And by the way, if you start by trying to tell the whole story in the first book, you're going to overwhelm people.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with them reading you saying this here, and that over time you've grown to understand it as that plus this here. Take them on the journey with you. You didn't start with full knowledge. You learned, and take the reader with you as you learned. It's good that way.
That's what I'm about to say. You need introductory material. Like if you were to hit people with so much of what we've learned recently, the introductory material is already overwhelming. You start throwing in all the new stuff. It's like it almost becomes impossible at that point.
Right.
Like, JB, it was like you were saying on the book club the other day about how Written in Stone worked so well, because it was so 85 pages. It was compact, and it dealt with material that people thought they knew. Everybody knows the top 10, right? The 10 commandments.
Yeah, I've got to go back and write. I do need to go rewrite that one, because it's a book that we no longer have on the site, and it did a good job of that. The reason that I did not include it in the recent published materials is that it does require, that book really requires a complete rewrite, and it's largely because of what is said on the first 3 statements. Pretty much had nailed. Don't be religious. God's only got one name. It's Yahowah. And the unforgivable sin, the thing that you can never recover from, is changing, altering, negating anything pursuant to Yahweh's name. Those 3 are very clear, and they were very clear then. I probably know 100 times more about those things now than before. But it's in the next 2 that our understanding has become profound. Yeah, what is the Shabat all about? How is it really is an actionable day, and what is God celebrating during the Shabat, and what are the examples that He is bringing, and then who are the parents that you should view as significant. I'm about ready to write 200 pages on those parents, and we already have a volume called The Last Word Picture, the Mashal, that introduces the world to them, and it's about 600 pages there. But they turn out to be really important characters in God's story, and they are not your earthly parents. Well, that is, unless you happen to be one of the characters that they gave birth to in that story. And there's really none of them around right now. They're listening. Well, they probably are listening, but they're up in Shamayim with much better knowledge than I have. Although I've been there with them. You just don't, when you get redeployed, there is a learning curve always, because God really wants you to be grounded, and it's just more important that way. But It's a lot of work. I hope to do it. I'm going to do it. I've got these 3 volumes of Coming Home that I'm trying to publish simultaneously. And I've got another 200 pages to write of volume 6. And I've just finished my evaluation of Moshe. That wasn't his first life. It was Joseph. And his mom and dad were not random. His mom and dad are essential players throughout God's story. And the Amma that nursed him wasn't just some random employee of Miss Pharaoh. No, she was his mother. And and by the way, he was not released to the care of Pharaoh's household until he was a full-ass grown man. He was somewhere in his 20s, maybe even his 30s, could have even been almost 40. Because you go from him being brought back to Pharaoh's daughter, who paid for his upbringing and provided shelter for his upbringing so he could be raised by his mother and father. You go from mom, who was called the Amma, and also has a name of Yochebed, significant to Yahowah. She raises him to Gadol status, significant in stature, powerful man, big, powerful, imposing man. And that's when she turns over to Pharaoh. And then the next line is that he walked out of Pharaoh's household, saw the taskmasters beating a Hebrew to death, and it was one of his brethren, and he knew him, and he killed the taskmaster. So he wasn't in Pharaoh's household, but days, and that's what it actually says. But very interesting, so different. It's like what you just said, JB. You start with material that people say, "Oh, I know that story," and it turns out that's not the story at all, not even close. And so you'll get a kick out of it's really an interesting reveal as to Moshe's actual upbringing and who he was and how he was positioned to do all of this. All right, so that's quite an adventure down our history together. Yeah, our history together, and I think it's interesting because you have a very credible voice in the Covenant family. People trust you because you've been consistent, which is really important for earning trust. You've been consistent now for 20 years in doing this. One of the very first things that you did is you created a website, the Bless Yahowah website, and you have probably the only full presentation of all of the audios that I've done, the talk shows and shattering myths shows and the Yahowah vlog that we did, not vlog, but the Yada Yada Radio that we did for so many years. You were a host on that show. And then you had your own translations and you presented the books as we would write them. And you've been a credible rock in this Covenant family for a very long time.
Just one correction there. Bless Yahowah was actually Richard McCord's website. And I just want to give him credit for that because he did great with that. Mine is Yahowah Beryth.
Yeah, okay, Yahowah Beryth. I'm sorry. Yahowah Beryth.
I just don't want to take credit for Richard's work because he did great with his website.
Yeah, Richard McCord is who you're talking about. Richard McCord was a really interesting fellow, and we ran into each other about the same time I met you. He was down and out in the world. I mean, it's hard to imagine a guy that suffered more than he did. He really had a rough go of it, and yet he survived, overcame, and in that process, he came to know Yahowah and was very active in the covenant. He would also like to spar on issues, and for the most part did so. He didn't have quite the finesse that you had, or quite the intellect that you had, and so sometimes he would get a little overheated in his presentations. But I loved the man's passion, and we really had a very good private relationship where we exchanged emails probably every other day, and I felt like it was really a part of his life, and he did really marvelous thing. So you're right. That is Bless Yahowah and your Yahowah Beryth. That's actually a better name. Yahowah's covenant, which is really all that Yahowah cares about, is his covenant family. And so, yeah, that's it. It goes back a long time, doesn't it? Richard hasn't been with us for probably over a decade now.
Yeah, those were the two most important websites for me when I was first introduced.
Yeah, Richard's saying here that your website and Richard's were the most important to him, because you guys did such a spectacular job of really making everything available. Yeah, you could listen to any radio program we had done, Yada Radio, plus have access to all the books and additional material and writings and thoughts. And
my biggest reason for creating the site was the idea that, all the internet suppression that was going on, that's been increasing and increasing, is, you're very public, you're very well known. So I could see them trying to shut down your site. And I wanted to have a secondary repository for all that information.
And I appreciate that. There are, in the early days when I was focusing mostly on exposing and excoriating Islam, my site was shut down places around the world. I would get letters, detailed letters from intelligence officers in the U.S. military, particularly those involved in the Afghanistan and Iraq war, and said, we've read all of your books and listened to all your shows. You're clearly the foremost expert on what we're fighting here. And yet the Department of Defense shut down the website. So that if you were enlisted, you couldn't read it. But the intelligence officers were all over it. The Iranian government tried to shut down Prophet of Doom, but yet there was undercurrent people that did the same thing you did that made it available, and it was the highest readership rating in the world was in Iran. So I appreciate you doing that, and it has always been the struggle. It's why social media is so hostile to us, because the message we have to convey is the antithesis of everything that the AI is running social media.
Unpopular opinion in the world.
Yeah, it's the most unpopular opinion in the world, which is God's message is anti-Christian, anti-Islamic, anti-Judaism. It's anti-political. It's anti-conspiratorial. And you remove those things, and you don't have, there's no following of any kind in social media. And we're vehemently opposed to anti-Semitism, and that is the undercurrent of everything on social media. All right, let's switch gears here. We're an hour into our program, and we really do have a lot to cover in the news. The reptilian overlord over here, King Toad, made a statement we reported on yesterday, but only by his text when he texted this. It is an entirely different thing to hear him speak it. But as an introduction, point one of his memorandum of understanding, which he says is nothing. It's not an agreement. That's not true. It has his signature, and it says you have agreed to these things. And in Article 1, one of the clauses in Article 1 is that all parties disengage from threatening the use of force. So by saying that he's going to drop bombs on people, or that I'm going to, if I want to a different agreement, I'm going to drop bombs on them, is in direct violation of his own agreement. I mean, he doesn't read and he doesn't think, so I don't know that, but it is a complete and utter violation of his own agreement. It is also insane. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And we have now done that over and over again with Iran, and it makes the situation worse every time this nincompoop decides to drop bombs on people. It is also a war crime to go and attack people for no justification, which is what he has done. And the Memorandum of Understanding is a hard, fast agreement. And it says that all of these points, and we went through them yesterday, these are agreed by the parties. These are final. And then there are points to be negotiated, And the only thing that you, doofus, can negotiate are those points that are open to negotiation. And there's really only one that is open to negotiation. Everything else is settled. And that is the disposition of Iran's enriched uranium. That is,
and they're not really negotiating. They're negotiating the implementation of those agreed to points. They're not negotiating the points themselves.
There is no negotiation on the 300 billion that is being given to Iran. There's no negotiation on the elimination of all sanctions against Iran. There's no negotiation on giving Iran their 25 billion back that was stolen by the United States. There's no negotiation on ending the war on all fronts, including Israel's involvement in Lebanon. There's no negotiation on giving Iran total control over the Strait of Hormuz or of Iran's ability to charge whatever fee they wish to charge on the Strait of Hormuz after the passage of 60 days. The removal of U.S. troops from the region, the end of the blockade, and non-interference in each other's governments, no continuation of the war, no threat of force. All of those things are absolutely agreed to. There's no negotiation on any of them. That is what the memorandum says that he signed. The only point that is negotiable is the disposition of enriched uranium. There is no negotiation on whether or not Iran can have a nuclear program. That has been agreed to. Yes, they can. There's no negotiation whatsoever on Iran's ability to continue to use their centrifuges to enrich uranium. They have that right. There's no negotiation on their mines to mine additional uranium. That is outside the scope of this. The last 2 points of this, the second to last, says that the only points subject to negotiation are those that are specifically to be negotiated, and they're really the only one is on the disposition of their enriched uranium. Iran is on record saying before, we don't want a nuclear bomb. We're not going to have a nuclear bomb. So that is not negotiable. It was a non-negotiable point previous, non-negotiable point now. And so it's only the disposition of uranium, and it's actually not the removal of it. The only negotiation is how much and by whom and to what extent is it downgraded from a certain percent to another percent. It doesn't even say the degree that it has to be downgraded. It doesn't specify who's going to oversee it, but it's not removed. It's just downgraded, but doesn't say how much, and doesn't say what happens after it's downgraded, whether it be taken right back. So he wants to compare this to Obama's PCA, and I'm here to tell you that that's like comparing a postdoc dissertation on quantum theory to the kindergarten school see Dick and Jane run. One's like 160 pages of detailed constraints on Iran's enrichment of uranium and development of a bomb with biting sanctions and everything else imaginable, and the transfer of a grand total of 1.7 billion of their money. And this one is a transfer of 325 billion, removal of all sanctions, and absolutely no agreement on anything pursuant to their nucure program. I mean,
this one could have been written on a cocktail napkin. 3 pages.
On the uranium side, it could have been written on a cocktail napkin, and yet it's 250 times more money is transferred. So when he squawks against this being so much better than Obama's deal, and Obama being an idiot, if Obama's deal was bad and Obama was an idiot, then I'm here to tell you, you around the world, sir. My interpretation. Let's go ahead and play it.
Text of the agreement now final, or are you still?
No, it's not final. It's a memorandum of understanding, and if I don't like it, we'll go back to shooting at them, dropping bombs on their head.
When do you expect the word?
If I don't like it, if they don't behave, we'll go right back to dropping bombs right smack in the middle of their head.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it when the dumpster here will says things that affirm our conclusion that he is Rahab, that he is Satan incarnate, and that he is going to be the most vile man in the history of humanity, and that he is the person that Christians have been searching for, that they call the Antichrist. There he is. And what he just said was insane, because that's the technique that he has been using, and it has failed miserably. That's why he's in this mess, number one. Number two, dropping bombs in the middle of people's heads is not only a war crime, it is grotesquely immoral. It's only a psychopath would say such a thing. And his memorandum of understanding is a signed binding agreement between the countries. So I'm sorry, you only get to negotiate what it says you can negotiate, and that's only one part of one point, and the rest of it, you got no say. You've already given everything away. You got nothing to negotiate. And it was the art of the steal. And what you did is you stole the future of America, and you stole the future of Israel. Duh.
You can only negotiate a deal when you have leverage. Iran had all the leverage in this negotiation.
Yeah, you can negotiate a deal without leverage. I've negotiated 99.9999% of the deals of my business career without any leverage. I didn't want to use leverage. I wanted a deal that was mutually beneficial, because those are the only kind that really matter and endure any period of time and actually benefit people. This is not negotiating a deal. These were surrender terms, and the surrender terms were presented by Iran. Trump could not resist these surrender terms, because if he didn't surrender, the Strait of Hormuz would have remained closed, and in so doing, the world's economies, including America's economy, would be destroyed. And so he put himself in a position where the only thing he could do was surrender. Now, the terms of surrender, if you have some leverage, you can try to mitigate the damage. The terms of surrender here, I think, were worse than the Treaty of Versailles. And the Treaty of Versailles, of course, signed in the same place as where Trump signed this, caused World War II. So this is a document of war. I think Iran realizes the document of war. They pushed their leverage too far, and you can do that. That's not a good negotiating when you do that. They pushed it too far, and they put Israel into a checkmate, and the U.S. into checkmate. And when you have a deal that egregious, you can be certain that both parties are your opposing party is going to rebel against the deal, and there will be a continuation of war. But I think that's what the Iranians want.
Well, yeah, they have the upper hand. Why stop?
Yes. One of the things I really come to despise is people like this. She's got her little cross, and she's got her old little makeup and her cowboy hat, and she's still got her pearls in her cross. Yeah, I must be, and my pretty lipstick there. And she's not going to say a word. You can play it. All she's going to do is say, when Jesus was a baby, my God was a baby. By the way, that doesn't say much for your God. Your God was born, and your God was a baby. So he started life as your God was a baby when he started his life, and he ended his life being tortured to death. That's really some God. And he says, when he was a baby, Satan promoted the government to kill all the babies. Now, by the way, it doesn't say that Satan did anything. She wouldn't know Satan if it bit her on the nose or give her a kiss on her overly blushed cheeks. And God was never a baby. Jesus never existed. There was no Jesus in the 1st century. It wasn't a Jesus until the 17th century, when the King Iam's Bible printed their 3rd edition. And the government had nothing to do with said non-existent Jesus, and there is zero historical credibility of that statement. When you present a statement that is supposed to be supportive of your religion, that Jesus, when Jesus was a baby, that the government promoted infanticide, guess what? Your religion is false because you have lied. That did not occur. Now she says, new government, same demons. Let that sink in. So you are a moron. Go ahead and play it.
I hate the religious that want to put everything on Satan. You know,
Yes.
everything's no. The fact of the matter is, humans suck.
Yeah, humans suck.
As a
And by the way,
species,
that-
in groups, we suck.
Yes, humans do suck. God made that point very clear. And oh, by the way, Jesus never existed. God was never a baby, and the government of Roman control never and ever promoted an infanticide, ever. So every bit of that is stupid. But the keyboard jihadists now are doing a lot of this now, which is they put something up above and they sit down and they just gloat, particularly if it's destructive to Israel. And most of what they're doing is AI has created a fake film, and they just sit there and gloat like she is doing here. And it is, I just think it's reprehensible. And I don't know if I'm more frustrated that there are nincompoops like this who do it, or that it must be popular because it's such a high percentage of the post that Facebook promotes, so that this appeals to people.
Yes, in the urban vernacular, this is called thought content. Okay, THOT, and this is what they call that hoe over there. So this is what is considered thoughtful content. It is, she literally says nothing. She has no message. It is just a face and this, and then it is 100% for attention.
Okay.
I didn't know
Why
that.
I avoid social media.
Oh, it is just a swamp of, but here's the problem. I would like to completely ignore it too. But social media is the media today. It has replaced a irresponsible media with a grossly less responsible media. And as today, the interaction between AI and humans is via social media. Social media is the realm of AI. It's controlled by AI. The posts are made by AI. This is not an actual person. It's all of it is all done to create images that people want to project. And it's all to drive algorithms that are run by AI to sell a message that is AI. And it's just pathetic, but it is our culture. It is what has happened to humankind.
I love the irony. We're creating AI images and AI videos to trigger AI algorithms.
All to drive revenue.
Yes. So you look at this picture here, and tell me, can you please count the Hamas operatives here, or is everybody here in a civilian?
This dude's got a green shirt. I don't know. I mean, Hamas wears green.
It's not even Hamas green, but yeah. So let's just be clear. What you're looking at here, that ain't Hamas. Could there have been some Hamas members in the midst of the group? Yeah, possibly.
One headband.
But yeah, the fact of the matter is that what you're looking at is symbolic of 10/7. 80+% of every picture you see of 10/7, 80+% are average Muslims, boys and young men from Gaza. 10/7 was not a Hamas act. It was an Islamic invasion. And not only that, Hamas was waging a war of public opinion long before 10/7. These are today the IDF released to the Jerusalem Post the last documents from Sinwar and his cadre of Muslims that were part of his council. And the what it says is that prior to 10/7, that Hamas, through Qatar, was funding protesters from colleges around the world, particularly in the United States and in Europe, to march on Israeli embassies and to march on the street and calling Israel genocidal while they were days away from perpetrating a genocidal attack on Israel. And that the idiots, the Marxists in today's universities fell for it and did exactly that. So the document lists a number of issues and recommendations saying, for example, I quote, "It is critical to push the public sphere of slogans. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Israel is committing genocide," slogans. Such as Al-Aqsa. Al-Aqsa is the name of the movement, Al-Aqsa Flood. Al-Aqsa is actually a blight. It's a curse on Islam. If you know the story of how Al-Aqsa came to be between the Quran and the Hadith, it's such a mockery of the idiocy of Muhammad and the stupidity of Allah. Al-Aqsa, when known from the earliest sources, proves that Islam is nothing but a farce. But they also know that people aren't going to do what I did, which is to do the study to prove that Al-Aqsa is a complete and utter farce. The security prisoners, the enemy aggressiveness against West Bank Palestinians, this whole thing about the settlers and the settlers being the fall guys, that's staged propaganda by Hamas, removing the Gaza Sea blockade as if Gaza should be able to import any amount of rockets and guns and whatever other weapons they want. The right to work and right to travel. That means that they should have free access to Israel. They shouldn't have to knock down the fence to go into Israel and learn where the kindergartens are so that they can be more effective in destroying them and killing the kindergartners, and the right to medical care without being extorted at the Eretz crossing. In other words, the medical care for those who are now scheming to kill and abduct Jews and to torture Jews needs to be provided by Israel. They're complaining that Israel's hospitals are not immediately available to Gazan Muslims when the Gazan Muslims are here, not just plotting, but will within days go off and murder 1,200 Jews. Think about the audacity of that.
Create your own hospitals. Maybe have your people learn to become doctors.
Yeah, and don't put
society.
Yeah, don't put Hamas centers underneath those hospitals. These must be inculcated with determination into the national Palestinian consciousness. In other words, all of these complaints against Israel have to be part of the whole myth of the Palestinian story, of which there, of course, is no such thing as a Palestinian, and he knew it. Next, it recommended that all military forces be kept up to date and ready to act so that there is a comprehensive efforts with Qatar. Collaborator. First one listed. Turkey, collaborator. Algeria, collaborator. Kuwait, to keep pressure on Israel to improve this humanitarian and unemployment situation. Why is it Israel's responsibility to employ those trying to kill them? Those who are going to demonstrate that they celebrate killing them. And yet, look who the collaborators are: Qatar, Turkey, Algeria, and Kuwait. Curiously, Hamas recommended that a civilian delegation be sent to visit parliaments around the world to rally support for ending the sea blockade of Gaza because, well, they wanted to be able to send any manner of weapons to the Muslims in Gaza as they could to obliterate Israel, and to encourage weekly and monthly protests. So this is now that Hamas recommended civilian delegations are sent to the parliaments around the world to encourage weekly and monthly protests outside of American embassies worldwide. So they had begun to fight the war of public opinion based upon their talking points and they were going to do the most horrid crime ever and have sympathy worldwide because of the morons that are part of that Marxist collaboration with them. This is stunning. All right, so we got a lot to cover, so I'll let you go on. I don't blame you for not wanting to add to that. That's pretty sick, isn't it? There are so many times that people claim that the Epic of Gilgamesh precedes the story of Noach, and that the story of Noach was based upon it. And I'm here to say, as Noach, that is just not true. But what nobody seems to recognize is that the tablets that we have that would date back, say, 2,700 years, don't get anywhere close to the time of the flood, not even close. And that they not only is the Torah history of what occurred 700 years older than the oldest one of those clay tablets. The story that the Torah tells with great specificity and detail actually begins 3,300 years before the oldest extant tablets of the Gilgamesh tale. The other thing that's also important to know is that the story that you have been told of Gilgamesh and the whole flood and that sort of thing, that's not in the oldest tablets. It's 1,500 years thereafter. There are papyrus translations of it that with all of that amount of time may have nothing even to do with the old fable. But the majority of what we're reading is so far distant, so far after the flood and the Torah. To compare them is to say, okay, well, I've got a fragment that's got 3% of the story. And I want to compare that. I want to expand the 3% of the story into 100% of the story, with a 97% of the story that doesn't materialize for another 2,000 years or 2,500 years is the one that I'm going to use that says that it predates your story, which took place 3,500 years before the affirmation of my story. But you don't have an honest person that does this, because if they go into this, they have an agenda. And the agenda is always to say that the Gilgamesh story precedes the Torah story of the flood, and it's just not true. The other thing that is the part of the stupidity of this is man's focus, particularly scholastic focus. They want to say there was an ark, there was a good man, there were family members, and there were animals, and there was a flood. Therefore, it's the same story, and one just the Torah just ripped off the Gilgamesh story. But the problem is, I've read everything in the original clay text and everything that has been subsequently written about that epic. And those two stories differ by in the range of 99.5%. There's almost no correlation between the stories. So you can't say that one story was based on the other when they differ 99 times more than they coincide. So just ultimately stupid what people are willing to believe.
Well, even beyond that, if you think about it logically, say it did predate it. Say it was accurate to it. They were the same exact story. If the event actually happened, that, it makes sense that, somebody would have wrote about it. So it doesn't negate, one does not negate the other, even if it were true what people want to claim about it. It's stupid to dismiss one because the other exists.
Yeah, my point is that yes, that is true. We know, because we have scientific proof that the flood occurred exactly when and where it happened, because of the Berkel impact crater and the evidence throughout the region, including the Black Sea, increasing 500 feet at exactly that time and going from freshwater to saltwater. There's absolute and irrefutable proof that that region was inundated to a massive degree at that particular time. So We have absolute proof that it happened, and that it happened in the area of Mesopotamia, and therefore an epic of that in Mesopotamia would be natural. And because it was they had pagan gods, they would take the kernel of the historical event and try to ascribe it to their pagan gods, and you get exactly what you would expect under those circumstances.
But they got space aliens.
Okay.
Eat, drink,
Next,
and be merry.
Well, this is getting to be pretty amazing. This, I think, took place 2 nights ago, where the Ukrainians actually bombed the one of the largest, if not the largest, oil distribution, refinement and distribution depot, storage depot in Russia. It's just outside of Moscow. And I watched the video of it where there's these tiny little drones are loitering all above it, and boom, boom, and explosions. Russia is in a real pickle here. Russia doesn't want to go to war with Europe. It doesn't want to obliterate Ukraine. All it wanted to do originally is just keep NATO out of the area and protect the ethnic Russians that the Ukrainians were killing along the eastern border. They accomplished what they wanted to do, and as I say, they have no interest in conquering Ukraine, taking Ukraine, governing Ukraine again, or obliterating Ukraine, and they don't want to go to war with Russia, with Europe. But what they want to do and what they're going to need to do are no longer coalescing. The strategy that Putin proceeded into this war with is that he could protect the ethnic Eastern Russians, bring them back into Russia, which is what they wanted and what it has already been done, and protect them while outlasting the 4 heads of state that have been particularly vile against Russia and wanting to actually crater Europe economically to promote war with Russia, because collectively they don't have, Merz is down to less than 10% popularity. Macron in the single-digit popularity. Starmer maybe 5 to 10% popularity. And so he knew that sense would prevail, that most Europeans don't want a war with Russia, and all he had to do was outlast this group of numbskulls. But he doesn't have that time anymore. So, I don't know if how Russia is going to respond, but I can tell you that they can't. Status quo is not going to work for Russia. So they're either going to have to stop Kiev, and there's only a limited number of ways they can do that, but they can do that, or they're going to have to send as they call it now, sending a message to European capitals by way of missiles and drones.
Yeah, I think that even if they level, and I mean that's like Gaza, level Kiev, right? I mean, not a building standing. It still doesn't fulfill the military targeting that they need to do to stop what the war in Ukraine. I think that Europe will continue to pump things, because this is a proxy war, and that they will have to attack Europe to shut that down.
Yeah,
Russia will have.
First of all, I don't think that Russia is going to turn Kiev into Gaza. It's not in Putin. It's not in the Russian mindset. But they can bomb Kiev and everything around Kiev to the point that there's it's like the Ulysses S. Grant and Sherman fought the Civil War. You can make continuing the war impossible. So they can do that, and they can take Odessa and make Ukraine a rump state, and they can send a strong message into the European countries that have been aiding and abetting the Ukraine and using them as a proxy by taking out large factories that make drones and missiles and that sort of thing. But there will be consequences of that, and I think Putin missed a tremendous opportunity when he didn't act while the Ukraine war was ongoing. Now, the Ukraine war looks like it's going to be ongoing because Trump has already reneged on his own agreement, and Israel bombed Lebanon again. So that war is going to fire back up. So he may have cover, but he needs the cover of that war to do what he wants to do in Ukraine. And I just think the world's in an exceedingly dangerous position because if this continues to happen like this and what happened in Leningrad earlier in the week, you continue to do that, and you'll put Russia in a position where their only response is to respond with nukes. And they will respond with nukes before they will allow you to continue to do this. Don't need to say much here, do you?
Drain the swamp, right?
Drain the swamp, and you turn the reflecting pool into swamp. The blue paint they put on the bottom is already peeling up. What, 14, 15, I don't know, $1 million non-contested bid from a donor, and he turned it into a swamp. That's the reflecting pool, all right. That's what he should see. A clown. SpaceX does not have plans, and it bothers me when you see things like this and you see SpaceX is planning. No. Elon Musk is hyping his stock, and he's had his AI Gronk create these images of fairy tales. And he's trying to sell thoughtless people on, I'm going to have data centers by connected via laser links on an orbital data platform. And boy, that makes SpaceX super valuable. Well, let's be clear. There is no way to ever make profit in AI. The data centers for AI are a sinkhole that has a 0% chance of profiting. So we need to talk about what AI is actually, why are those 5 people who are promoting AI the most aggressively, what are they trying to achieve by these massive investments of money into something that has a 0% possibility of ever making money? And data centers in space are I don't know, what is when you have less possibility of something becoming profitable than 0. That's what they are in space. On terra firma, in the most optimum circumstances, with access to unlimited power and unlimited water, they are these prohibitively expensive without any chance of return. And so in space, it just multiply that 1,000-fold, maybe 1,000,000-fold, becomes even less useful. And cooling something in space is not what you might think, because just because the thin atmosphere at that point is exceedingly cold, there's no contact with anything to whisk the heat away. So cold doesn't really have much of a factor if there isn't any contact. And
the swings are so huge.
Yeah, right. You've got solar rays there. The impact of the sun's rays will take the temperature up really to very, very high numbers, because there is nothing to take the heat away. So for the solar cells to work, it has to be exposed to the sun. If it's exposed to the sun's going to make that thing burning hot, not to whisk temperature away. And that's the biggest cost of all of these things, is controlling the systems. They have to have liquid cooling systems to whisk the temperature away. And water, because of the surface contact of water, is so much more than air. You have to use chilled water as opposed to chilled air to cool these things. Otherwise, they stop performing. They just stop working. And in space, all you have is the aggravation of that. I mean, the reason that the James Webb Telescope has that huge 3-layer gold shield that you see that's so ubiquitous with its look, That's to keep the sun's rays from ever striking it. Because if the sun's rays strike it, it raises the temperature and the electronics no longer work.
Mm-hmm.
This is trying to do the opposite. It's trying to generate electricity through the solar panels, which means this is a complete and utter farce. He is not revealing what he is planning. He's hyping his stock.
Yeah. I love the connected by laser links. So we're going to send electrical power by lasers now, right? Is that what the idea is here? That we're going to generate electricity in space, and so if we can send it through a laser to the next panel, right, to the next station, why can't we send it to Earth, right? Oh wow,
well, the data. A laser would not be the right way to send the data, and a laser is not going to send the energy. It's not going to send the data, and it's not going to do anything for cooling. It's wrong on all levels. You could have,
but it gets so much cooler when you say lasers, right? As soon as you say lasers, the hype level goes from 9 to 14.
Where's your lightsaber?
Right, exactly.
Luke. Democrats, eyeliner boy wants you to know. Democrats have become anti-Semitic, anti-Christian, and anti-white. Well, that's true. The Dems are anti-Semitic, probably 95%. Anti-Christian, not so much. I don't think they care. Anti-white, not really anti-white, but the anti-Semitic part's right. But the thing about the Republican Party is that if you work hard, you play by the rules, boy, that would sure be Donald Trump, right? And you love this country, you are playing on our team. Do you think this piece of SHIT thinks that it's his team? Does he think there really is a Republican Party? There is no Republican Party. And you are not part of Trump's team, sir. You're not. You're about to be escorted out of the party, as a matter of fact. It is Trump's MAGA. And everybody that sucks up to as part of Trump's MAGA is the devil's advocate. But there is no Republican Party anymore. It hasn't been since Trump rose and the Twitchian MAGAs decided to play. You white supremacist Christian MAGAs stole the Republican Party. It doesn't exist anymore. And it ain't yours, pal. It all belongs to one man, Donald J. Trump.
Yeah, they just want to take over the marketing assets that the GOP has, the grand old party. But it's a MAGA party now, absolutely.
Oh my goodness. Shelves in there. Isn't that so nice? They built the nice shelves and they had the big doorway. Isn't that so clever? And all of the scrolls are just laid in there so nicely and open containers without tops. And there's a wood ladder that was left in there for them to get to these and all sorts of containers in the same cave with a beautiful view of the Dead Sea Scrolls and lovely light inside. That is so far away from Cave 1 and what was in Cave 1 and how the scrolls were protected in Cave 1 and how the shepherds found it. And it's just astonishing that they are going to use AI and AI isn't capable of doing the research itself. So AI bungled the whole thing, is creating a false version of reality when the information is available. And I know it. Why can't the AI know it? That what they have depicted here is a complete and utter farce.
If it was that open and that exposed, why did it take thousands and thousands of years for anyone to find it?
Yeah, well, beyond that, if it was open and exposed that way, they would have gone. They would have been ruined. There would have been nothing left. They would have been disintegrated. So no, that is not the way they were. They were in sealed jars. There were only 5 scrolls in Cave 1. They were not set up on shelves. There was no ladder. There was no light in there. None of this is true. Could not have done what we did in writing the Yahowah series without the great Isaiah scroll found in Cave 1, or without the great Psalm scrolls. They were essential to correcting the Masoretic text. But this is not the way it happened. And it's just a great example of how AI is really not very smart.
It wasn't like a kid who just happened to stumble upon the cave.
Mm-hmm.
No, they actually didn't. What happened is that there were two young men who were trying to watch their sheep graze in what is really an inhospitable area. And they lost, one of them lost a sheep and was trying to go after that sheep and was stumbling and stumbled into a cave. And when he stumbled into the cave, they found because before he went into it, it was completely dark in there, couldn't see. Not like this picture, couldn't see, and wanted to know before he went into the cave, what's in there. So he tossed a rock into the cave, and when he heard what the rock hit, had a ceramic sound to it, not more rock or not dirt. So that piqued his interest. He went back into the cave and he tried to find out what was the ceramic sound, because he knew that if he found a piece of old ceramic, he could sell it on the black market. So he went back in to get the ceramic, and found scrolls in it that he didn't think have any value. Actually, they hung them up like they were on a clothesline out in the village there for a while. And it was a unscrupulous antiquities dealer that tried to whisk them away. And it was only because there was a Hebrew scholar that was willing to go and risk their lives at a period of time when Israel was everything around the Temple Mount, for example, was under barbed wire. The Muslims had barbed wire and all manner of fencing and total exclusion. Jews couldn't go to their Temple Mount or anywhere near it, or into Jerusalem. And this man was willing to pursue it with risk of his life, and then followed the auctions of all of this, because the Muslims wouldn't sell it to a Jew, and found a way to bid on it and put out considerable amounts of money and bought the great Isaiah scroll. If he had not done that, it's unlikely that we would have even found the rest of the scrolls or ever known anything about them. So there's this wonderful providence associated with this, and the AI missed all of it.
Right. I think their point was, what if there are still ancient Hebrew scrolls waiting to be discovered in the deserts of Israel?
I don't think it
changes it doesn't change the story at all, does it?
We have everything we need. We had nothing from the book of Esther, but we didn't need anything from Esther because it was a piece of garbage anyway. And every other book is represented, and God was repetitive enough that every message that he wanted to convey to us, we know. And within 4 years of our talking here, I expect to have access to the original autograph of the Torah as it was written by Moshe. And you take the greatest of the prophets with Yahowah, we have the entire scroll, everything of it. The man that's the most important to us would be Dode, and there's more copies of the Psalms than anything else in the Dead Sea Scrolls. I've got more than if I had 1,000 years, and I hope to have the 1,000 years to go do this. That we can continue to write books for 1,000 years, and you think it's already overwhelming there, JB? We're going to make overwhelming times 1,000. But it's fun. It's a lot to learn. It's really a good thing, and it's not overwhelming to you anymore or anybody that's in the covenant, and that's the good thing. We're building affirmations and knowledge on top of knowledge. But I don't like it when something that is profoundly important is corrupted this way. Okay, sir. Oh yeah, so this is funny. Babylonian Bay. Occasionally they get a funny one, mostly not anymore. So the world leaders are now lining up to ask Trump to bomb their countries. Yep. Just bomb us for a while and then give us a few $100 billion.
Mm-hmm.
This was the old line about the U.S. has always been laughed at, that the U.S. would go and attack a country and then feel badly about the attacking the country and give the country lots of money for retribution and renewals and to build their country back. And so the fastest way to build a new country and to enhance your treasury was to go have the United States declare war against you. Well, now we're back to the same plan. So world leaders are lining up to say, can we be next? Bomb us for a while, and then we'll give us $325 billion.
Right.
We'll be
I
good.
saw one today that said Cuba has just announced it's beginning a nuclear program. So
yeah, there you go. Mm-hmm. Okay, what do we have next, sir? Oh yes, this is worth playing. We'll just play it because it's the then and then now, where Trump says, "I never wanted to eliminate their nuclear or their missile program," and then Trump says, "I never wanted regime change." So listen to the before.
We're going to destroy their missiles and raise their missile industry to the ground.
I'm saying that if other countries have them, it's a little bit unfair for them not to have some.
No, we're not talking about any easing of sanctions or giving money. No sanctions, no money, no nothing.
It's not our money, it's their money. And we froze it. At a certain point in time, I guess we're going to have to give it back. It truly is regime change. And regime change is an imperative.
Now, you talk about regime change. I never cared about regime change.
Face the Nation moderator and chief
That's
foreign
enough.
affairs.
That's enough.
We're
That's
going to
enough.
destroy their...
That's enough. That's enough. You don't need to add anything to that. It's just he's a lion POS.
his face would have turned red and he would have stormed out of the room if we'd played that in front of him.
Yeah, denial. This is one of the most vile people on the planet, Ben-Gvir. And Ben-Gvir is having a public meltdown over the Trump-Iran deal. You're not recognizing you POS, and a lot of POSs in the world, and unfortunately too many of them in the Israeli government, that you made this mess. You created a government that destroyed Gaza, and by destroying Gaza, you made Israel isolated, so there's only one nation on earth that would do business with Israel. So you isolated Israel, made it a pariah of the world by destroying Gaza. That's what you wanted to do, and you did it. And then you went and not once but twice invaded under this recent term Lebanon. And you angered the world again. And then you went to war not once but twice against Iran. And you partnered the United States in your war against Iran on the lie of regime change. And now the consequence of that is this deal where you were painted into a corner by yourself and checkmated. You were so stupid, you got checkmated. Now sit down and shut up.
And it's not like he had a different plan, right? I mean,
he was the shrillest voice of all of them. His voice was shriller than Netanyahu. If Netanyahu even wanted to back down from being stupid and belligerent, this was the a-hole behind him that was the most shrill of all. He is the lightning rod for why the world hates Israel. JB, it's tough to be in this position where you've got to hold Israel accountable for their mistakes, because we love Israel. It really tears my heart out, but the prophets have been very clear that Israel entered the time of trouble exactly a month ago, and it's going to be there for the next 7 years, and that Israel is there because of their own stupidity and their own recalcitrance and their own stiff-necked behavior. And this next one here is proof of that. The first round of talks with Iran were supposed to start today. Eyeliner Boy was supposed to be in Switzerland where the discussions were supposed to take place. This is the discussion on the only part of the 12, there's a 14-point plan. There's only negotiation on one point on that plan. And it is the disposal to some extent, somewhere, somehow, of Iran's enriched uranium. That's it. Nothing else. That's the only thing that's open to discussion. And the discussions on it, which is the only thing America gets out of this whole deal, is that they were canceled. And they were canceled because Israel bombed Lebanon again. Now, Israel bombed Lebanon because, ostensibly because the battalion head and 3 others were in a tank, and the Lebanese have been very effective at drones. And they and Hezbollah destroyed a Israeli tank with the unit commander in it. And Israel did the only thing Israel knows how to do: you hit us, we hit you back. And they dropped bombs on Lebanon. And when they did, that's a violation of the first codicil, and you could say of that the Trump memorandum of understanding. And they said, so until you can rein in your ally, we're not meeting on the other issue, which is the uranium issue, and not having a bomb. So there you go. Your choice, but you got to rein them in. It was checkmate for Israel, and Israel doesn't want to be checkmated. I understand that, but you have been checkmated. You have no options at this point. And so the Iranians are saying, no deal. We won't even talk to you. You're still committed, by the way, to releasing all sanctions because you signed that. You're still committed to releasing our $25 billion. You're still committed to releasing the $300 billion. You're still committed to pulling out of the blockade and removing yourself from the region. Those things you are all committed to doing, but we don't have to negotiate the point on enriched uranium until you are in compliance with the rest of the agreement. And right now you're not. Goodbye. We'll go ahead and click more on this because I want to read the statement by Naftali. Naftali is the more moderate of Israel's alternatives to Netanyahu. He was the prime minister and a deal that he made with Lapid, and he actually honored the deal he made with Lapid and let Lapid become prime minister for a shorter period of time. Lapid is the pretty boy that his daddy was a politician. I think he's been an actor in his life. He really brings no credentials to anything, and he represents the most liberal, the Marxists in Israel. And they have gone from completely controlling Israel and the IDF to being out of power, with the exception of the judicial branch. They control it, and they control the IDF. And so this moderate and the liberal formed an alliance, thinking they could take down Netanyahu. And their issue isn't they have no clue, no interest in anything. They would not have formed this alliance if their purpose was to benefit Israel, because they are too far apart in their beliefs. They did it for political power. They want to be prime minister. So speaking with the Times of Israel on June 11th, the campaign headquarters of Together, which is what these two, the moderate and the liberal, forming their allegiance. And by the way, Lapid's popularity has crumbled, so he adds very, very little. The new merged party leads with the former prime minister Yair Lapid, and Bennett said, Israel is facing an existential moment. And in this existential moment, he warned that another term under the current government would leave the country without a functioning economy, society, or international position. Another 4 years with this government, and we won't have an economy. We won't have a society, he warned. The Haredi issue will crash us all. We won't have an international standing anywhere. So when I tell you that Israel is a country that's imploding, I know what I'm talking about. It's imploding. And when I tell you that one of the central problems of Israel is the Haredi, over 20% of Israelis, ultra-Orthodox and Haredi, that they are parasites, and that they're rioting now, and that so long as they are paid to be parasites, Israel has no future. They are the Black Plague. Now, that's half the problem. The other half the problem is represented by a pretty boy with a nice smile over there, Lapid. He represents the Marxists, which are more interested in their sexual orientation. This is impossible, and it's already over. Israel was checkmated this week. It literally checkmated. When somebody says checkmate in chess, what's your next move, JB?
Nothing.
That's right.
There's literally no move.
You have no move. You've lost. Israel was checkmated. So this is on Dr. Jordan Peterson, who has become a promoter of religion as opposed to a psychiatrist. And he is on doing an interview where then you can hear the speaker, famous guy. In fact, I've been on his show before, and he wants to make the point that the commandment, as they would say it, and it's not a commandment, it's an instruction, that thou shalt not kill is invalid, that it's an invalid translation, but that we shouldn't blame the King James Version for that. They didn't know that Hebrew has two words for kill, and that ratash and harag are very different terms, and that one means murder and the other one means kill. And so it says, do not murder. My guess, JB, you've been through this before and probably know, as I point out here, that there aren't just two Hebrew words for kill. There's 7, 8, 9. I mean, I just quickly off the top of my head, I wrote down 7 of them here, but all total, there's probably 12. And that if you were to explore on all of the lexicons the definition of ratash and harag, what you'll read is exactly the same definition. To kill, to slay, to slaughter, or murder. Premeditated or accidental. Now, the interesting thing about ratash that most people don't recognize, that it is very similar to the verb ratah, which means to be pleased with, to find favorable, and to accept. And if you want to make that correlation, then that would be premeditated killing, killing for pleasure. And that the only difference is the hey ending versus the che ending. So the words are very, very closely related, and both are verbs. And so it would shape this as something where you find killing pleasurable, like you're in the military. But harag, the word that he wants to have is just kill and not murder, also means murder. So he's wrong. And then you've got katal, which means to slay, kill, or slaughter. Cha'al is to defile and make common and desecrate, but also to slay, fatally wound, and to pierce. Tabak, which is to slaughter, slay, butcher, and ruthlessly kill. Shakat, which is to kill, slaughter, and beat to death. And zabak, which is to slaughter, kill, and sacrifice. So lots of Hebrew words for it. He's wrong saying that there are two, and he's also wrong in saying the distinction between the two is one's murder and one is just killing. If you're going to make a statement and pretend to be an expert, you need to speak truthfully, and he's not. The instruction here is just one word long, because the subject and the object are woven into the verb, and as well as is the negation of the verb. But the instruction is understood by the imperfect conjugation. It's the imperfect conjugation that makes the distinction that's important, and he didn't know that and didn't say anything about that. And that's something that we've been teaching here for a very long time, that the imperfect conjugation is used on every single one of the statements, with exception of the one about mother and father being respected, which uses an imperative, which means that it is your choice. This is something you should choose if you want to elongate your life. So it's the only one that gives you a benefit if you do it, and gives you a choice where all the others are written in the imperfect. And by being written in the imperfect, what that means is you are not guilty of violating this instruction unless you continue to do something. So if you have killed somebody inadvertently, you're not guilty of doing this. But if you're in the military and killing is your job, or you're a Trump and I'm going to go back to dropping bombs on their head, then you're absolutely guilty of it, because the imperfect speaks of ongoing or habitual behavior, where the perfect would be one and done. So they're all written so that we all have borne false testimony at one point or another, by either intent or by mistake. And the moment you stop, you're no longer in violation of the instruction. That's the part that is important here. You should not make a habit of killing.
See, I've always loved that about the Hebrew language with the perfect and imperfect, because one time doing an action does not define you. Habitually doing it speaks to your personality, to your person. You know, that defines you. You know, everyone lies. Sometimes it's appropriate to lie. You know, if you were hiding Jews in Nazi Germany, lying to the SS was a good thing. You know, if someone's raping my daughter, killing him is a good thing.
It is correct.
Killing can be a good thing.
Yes.
The habit of killing defines you. That a one-time action does not define you. Habitual actions define you.
Yeah. Moshe committed murder.
Yeah.
Premeditated murder. And then he tried to cover up the crime. So he committed murder. It was a good thing that he did. It was the ultimate test of his character, that he would stand up and kill somebody that was bludgeoning an innocent person to death. So killing is, but he never made a habit of killing.
Yeah.
So that's the point that should have been made, and that point was not made. Teaching is just be accurate. If you're going to speak for something that pertains to God, for God's sake, be accurate. Or don't speak. Oh, this thing is just so whacked out weird that I don't even need to play
I almost thought it was a video game.
Yeah, I play a little bit just to say that somebody is convinced that that God found a beast, and there were giant beasts that were tearing things apart, but one beast repented and said, "Oh God, I'm sorry that I'm such a bad beast." That God decided that he was going to bless the bad beast that turned into a repentant beast. It's just rubbish. I mean, not only is religion a mind virus, but now AI has caught it, because that's what this is.
Yeah.
The billionaire tax has made it onto the California ballot. Are you aware that the top 1% of earners, I've said this so many times, but they pay 40% of U.S. income tax, the top 1% of earners. So they're not paying their fair share. They're paying 4,000% of their fair share. That's the fact. They're not paying their fair share. They're paying 4,000% of their fair share.
So I always hated with the Democratic, the wealthy need to pay their fair share. We all agree on that, but that's a very nebulous term. Yeah, what is fair? Your definition of fair, my definition of fair, but by any definition of fair, that's not fair.
40%.
Well, no, listen. If everybody paid the same percent, and the people that made the most, therefore paid the most, because we're all paying the same percent. And it's some low percent, 1 or 2% of your income. I got no problem with that. That's fair for everybody. Just don't use it to kill people and for war and for other kinds of propaganda. But that's fair. To have 1% pay 40%, that's not fair. To have 40% pay nothing, no, that's not fair. So what we have now is grossly unfair, and it's grossly in the wrong direction. But this idea that you want to tax not income, but wealth, this is the ultimate, and I have a post on this. We may not have the time to get to it, but that's the mistake that people can't fathom because they don't understand economics. If you were to tax stock gains, which is why that's how you would tax Bezos. Bezos' wealth is in stock. Ellison's wealth is in stock. Musk's wealth is in stock, and Zuckerberg's wealth, they're all in stock. And so if you were to tax their increased wealth when their value of their stock goes up, they would have to sell that stock to pay for the tax. And then when the stock went down, because they're selling so much stock, and therefore it will go down based upon supply and demand, you would have to pay them for the money that you have taken from them, because now they're becoming less wealthy, and that change would mean you'd have to return the money that you took from them. And if you were to tax people based upon their share ownership, no one is going to own shares, because you couldn't afford to pay tax on what is a marker. A stock is not money. You can't go to the grocery store and say, I'm going to give you a share of my stock. It is not money. It's not transferable in that way. And so the only way they could pay and the only thing that the U.S. government takes, they do not take stock certificates and taxation. They take the debt currency that we have. So if you were to require the largest shareholders, the Bezos of the world, for example, to pay a billionaire tax, then he's going to have to sell stock to do so, and no one is going to own stock. If there's no one's going to own stock, guess what? There'll be no investment in business. And if there's no investment in business, guess what? There are no employees. And if there's no employees, guess what? You have no economy. So guess what? You will then be able to tax those who have nothing. And what is it when you tax people who have nothing? It's called slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody becomes a slave.
Even if, say, it was all in cash, if we were to tax the top 10%, 60% of their entire wealth, we could run the government for maybe a year.
No.
That's the problem. No. It's how much we spend, not how much we bring in.
It's not true. The thought is correct, but you could run the government for about a week.
Yeah.
Yes. If you confiscated it all,
it's still not enough.
You could run the government for a week.
Because
now what?
We spend so much. That's the issue, is how much we're spending.
Right.
It doesn't matter. You can't bring in enough to compete with how much we're spending.
And it's because democracy doesn't work. That's because democracy is the have-nots having a legal means to steal from the productive, so that we penalize the productive and reward the unproductive, and that's what a democracy is. That's why our founding fathers hated democracy.
Yep.
There's beautiful, there is ugly, and then there is this. That has to be the most hideously ugly monument I have ever seen. I've seen some ugly ones. I've been around the world in 175 countries. I've been everywhere. That's the most hideously ugly thing I think I've ever seen.
And they're celebrating their grand opening, right? I saw something the other day. I saw something the other day where most of and of course it was very Afrocentric. The problem was that the black contractors that worked on this project have not been paid yet, and they're all going out of business because they have to have lawsuits to go get their money from the Presidential Library Fund or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Just want to know what the architect was thinking when they designed that.
Oh, it's just pathetic. The U.S.-Iran peace talks are canceled. I've already talked about this. We can go on to the next slide. But they're canceled because Trump and Israel both violated the first paragraph. Trump threatened violence, and Israel bombed Lebanon. They can't read their own agreements. And Israel can say, we're not party to the agreement. Well, you attacked Iran and you lost, and you attacked Iran with the United States that wants out of the war. So it's your agreement too, whether you want it or not. Then, if you didn't want to be included in it, then you shouldn't have not only attacked Iran, but encouraged the attacks on Iran. This guy was my neighbor for years and years and years. The lie of an inconvenient truth and his story of global warming, which proved out to be completely untrue, at least based upon his theories. He took pictures of glaciers and showing the glaciers retreating. Well, the glaciers have been retreating since 1850, when we ended a warming period. And if the Earth were given the chance to go back into a cooling period, which would not be healthy for the Earth, they would grow again. And they have grown and retreated every 600 years based upon events that have nothing to do with man, and going way back millions and millions of years before humanity was even existed. And so the whole thing was predicated on a lie. It was easy to prove that it was a lie. And yet the Marxists, because it gave them control in a way to take money from people who were productive and keep a slice of it themselves, have been promoting it. And when he finally admitted, he says, well, while an inconvenient truth did not prove to be accurate, it did make me very rich.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Al Gore. Yeah, I met him many, many, many times, including in my own neighborhood. I think this is one we can play. And if we we can no, we won't play this one, because this is not the one that I want to play. This one, he's asking for faith in President Trump.
Right.
Faith is religion.
Mm-hmm.
So what he's saying is, we're going to pretend like this is Christianity. You can't prove any of it. In fact, all evidence is to the contrary. But if you just believe, just believe. So that's what he's done. We're going to turn politics into religion, and you just believe. He's he's God.
I'm gonna say politics is religion. I talked before. I didn't grow up in a very religious family, but my family is very political.
Yes.
They are. Yeah, that is their religion.
Yeah. My father was exceedingly religious, highly conspiratorial, and a racist, also an anti-Semite. And my mother was exceedingly religious, so I got it from both sides. I just ended up rejecting both of it. There was no substance to either of it.
Politics and religion are two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. Here's from the Atlantic saying Trump does not understand the war that he lost. Well, it's true, and it's called confabulation. And if you Google confabulation, you'll see people who confabulate present incorrect memories, ranging from subtle inaccuracies to surreal fabrications, and may include confusion or distortion in the temporal framing, timing, sequence, or duration of memories. In general, they are very confident about their recollections, even when challenged with contradictory evidence.
And that's the kicker. They are confident in their recollections. That's the kicker.
even when confronted with contradictory evidence, like that thing where he showed the three statements that he made prior to the war and the three statements after the war, and they're absolute opposites.
I never said that.
This is just worth seeing just a moment of this. And the reason I want people to see this is that Apocalypse Now, while a movie about all the things that were wrong about Vietnam, and it shows here an aerial attack that was very similar to what we did at My Lai, and you're killing indiscriminately women and children and blowing up villages. And you're doing it as patriots because you're out there saying, oh, yeah, go America. And all you have to do is to realize that you project force on people like that, just like we did in Iran. You blow up a school, you blow up hospitals, you blow up bridges, you rain hell down from the sky. And the people who you're raining hell down, the people that you drop bombs in the middle of their head, Mr. Trump, hate you. And they hate you for good reason. And that rather than prevailing and having a positive outcome, it leads to the country who does this being disrespected by the world. I just play a little bit of it.
This is on YouTube. I don't think it'll play.
Oh, okay. So it won't play. Okay. The thing that troubled me is one of my favorite pieces of music is the Ride of the Valkyries, often called the March of the Valkyries. It was written by Robert Wagner. And And he's often associated with Nazism, even though he lived 100 years before the Nazis. And I was just trying to say, is there any way that I can actually enjoy this what is a stirring piece of music, well written? And so I decided before we played the thing, and now we can't play it, but you'll be able to play it, I think, on our website, because this has the UE helicopters coming in over a Vietnamese village and napalming them, and the high caliber machine guns are riveting bullets everywhere, and the Hueys are in an orchestrated fashion. It's beautiful the way they're presented in the sky, while the colonel says, "I want you to play the music," and they're playing the March of the Valkyries and playing it from speakers as they go in. And it's a devastating piece of movie making that causes you to have to face what the United States has done and what it did. This is what it did in Afghanistan. It's what it did in Iraq. It's what it did in Libya. It's what it did in Syria. It's what it has done in Iran.
Mm-hmm.
It's devastating to face this, and that's the purpose of it. Well, anyway, I wanted to tell you, JB, I did look up him. He, at the time he wrote this, he was a socialist. He was a Marxist. Hitler 100 years later was a Marxist as well. He was a socialist. So he was a socialist. He was an atheist. But towards the end of his life, he changed all that, and he became a raging anti-Semite. And he adapted this music for a Germanic Norse play based upon the superiority of paganism to the story in the Hebrew Bible. And so that's how March or Rite of the Valkyries came to be, is he was trying to show the superiority of Germanic paganism over the stories in the Hebrew Bible, because he didn't like Jews. And that's why Hitler ultimately liked his music. So that does it for me on Ride of the Valkyries. It's kind of a shame. I play it and it stirs memories, and it stirs the memories of this, which is, it's a tragic scene, but you know that the scene is fabricated, that people weren't actually killed in this movie. But it reveals what's wrong with the U.S. military.
The irony of it is there are so many Americans that will watch that scene and be like, hell yeah. They don't realize it for what it's supposed to be, which was a condemnation of all of that. They'll just watch it. How many people quote the line, I love the smell of napalm in the morning, thinking that's a good thing.
Yeah. But I quote the line all the time because I know it's a very bad thing.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's one of the great movie lines of all time, but it's like everything else. You have to have the right perspective to understand what it is that you're witnessing. Perspective is often everything, and this was not to glorify war; it was to condemn war, and particularly the U.S. and Vietnam. So the preliminary deal to end the war between the U.S. and Iran faced fresh challenges today after Switzerland said that there are new strikes in Lebanon. I'd seen so many posts on it, and then I verified them that Israel did strike Lebanon today after the attack on its tank crew. And Israel, you've been checkmated. You have no more moves left. You continue this, and it will be immediate destruction of the Israeli state. Immediate. So you can pull out and be vulnerable because you've been checkmated, and it will be very costly to Israel. Or you can proceed to do as you have done, and it will cause the immediate demise of Israel. Checkmate means it's over for you. You've been played into a corner. At this point, there's no salvation of the Israeli state as a political entity or a religious entity. None. All you've got now is individuals returning to Yahowah. And the only way you're going to do that as you're Israeli now is to go to yadayah.com. That's the only place you're going to find that roadmap back. So that is where you are. And the sooner individually you begin to accept that, you're going to have individual Israelis that come home to Yahowah. But there is no saving. Checkmate means checkmate. The game's over. You lost. You were played for fools by Hamas and destroying Gaza. You set yourself up so you only have one ally in the world, and the ally that is your one ally is Satan. Literally Satan. The prophets have been very clear. You are now a vassal of Satan. We're going to play that clip. We're going to get to it here. I presented it twice today. I just didn't know it was going to be that far down. Maybe it's this one. This one though is not a video, so we can't play that one. That's the thought.
It's a video. It'll play.
Oh, it is. Play it, please.
I saw the Axios report. That Netanyahu is fuming. That's not reflective of the conversations that I've had with him, but maybe he's saying something to somebody else that he's not saying to me. What I will say, and this does bother me, is that you've seen people within Bibi's cabinet who have come out and attacked the deal, and in some ways very personally attacked the president of the United States. And I guess my message to them would be twofold. Number one, Donald J. Trump is the only head of state in the entire world who is sympathetic to the nation of Israel at this moment in time. And he happens to be the head of state of the world's superpower. If I was in the cabinet of the Israeli government, I might not be attacking the only powerful ally that I have anywhere left in the entire world. And the second message I would give to some of those cabinet members, Bibi, to his credit, has not gone down this path, but to some of these cabinet members in Israel who are attacking the president of the United States, the other thing that I would say is that over the last 3 months, 2/3 of the defensive weapons that have protected your homeland have been built by American hands and paid for by American tax dollars. The problem for Israel is not Donald J. Trump. And anybody in Israel who thinks their biggest problem is the president of the United States needs to wake up and smell the reality of the situation that country is in. I saw the Axios.
He is absolutely right and absolutely wrong. This is the single most devastating clip I have ever watched. It says exactly what I have been saying without him actually saying why that is so devastating. Israel, because of what it did in Gaza, its response to 10/7 was so inappropriate in the complete obliteration of Gaza. Israel turned the entire world against it. Not just to a point where nobody wants to support Israel, to the point that most people the world over hate Israel. That Israel is no longer looked at the victim of Islamic terrorism. They're the perpetrator of all manner of evil. That's how Israel is depicted because of Netanyahu's choice to do something really stupid in Gaza. And his attacks in Gaza were stupid. And Israelis, you own it because you supported it. You thought it was a good idea to attack and invade Gaza. And by destroying it, you isolated yourself from the entire world and turned the world against you. And Israel, because of the fact that you had done that, and then decided that you would go and beg the United States to not once, but twice, go into war with you for regime change in Iran. And you lost that war that you had no chance of winning. There wasn't one chance in 100 billion you could win that war. And it was obvious that the consequence of that war was going to be exactly what we're witnessing now. I told you exactly that this was going to happen in exactly this way and exactly this time, and you didn't listen. And I didn't say it once. I said it 1,000 times. I may have said it 10,000 times. And that the worst part of the whole thing is that he is correct. There's only one person of political power in the world who will tolerate Israel. And Israel gets 60% of their weapons from that country. And that country has now turned on Israel. And you've been checkmated by that country. And oh, by the way, that leader of the country is Satan. Not just maybe a little demonic, not just a little insane, not just a bit grotesquely immoral. He is Satan. The prophets are never wrong. They depict him as Satan. I told you this 2 years ago, that Donald Trump is Satan. And that you were becoming a vassal of Donald Trump. And that what you did in Gaza was going to isolate you from everybody but Satan. And there you are now, because he's right. You get 60% of your weapons from a country that is now run by Satan, and you're the only person of any political influence in the world that will even tolerate you happens to be Satan. And you put yourself in this position. That's why it's checkmate. You allowed Hamas to play you so that you would destroy Gaza, which they wanted you to do because you destroy Gaza and some 50,000 Muslims get to be martyrs. Well, it leads to the destruction and the isolation of Israel, which is what you did. And then you went off and doubled down by attacking Iran not once but twice, making a bad situation much worse. Going all in with the United States when we told you, when the prophets told you that the president of the United States was Satan. He is Rahab. He is the corporeal manifestation of the adversary. He is that person that the prophets talked about, that warned you about. And you're in the time of trouble. This next 7 years, 2 out of every 3 Jews are going to die. This is where you are. I'm hoping we haven't lost the whole stream as I'm looking at a completely blank page.
We're still on here.
Okay, well, I'm glad. So I've lost the stream here, but this is what you've done, Israel. You are now totally and completely at the mercy, and he has no mercy, of Donald J. Trump. You are a vassal of Donald J. Trump. And the prophets are absolutely clear. Donald J. Trump is the corporeal manifestation of Satan that destroys the world, and particularly Israel. He is the one who will betray you, and he has already done so. And now that you have messed up his surrender so that he's got to go and surrender again, now that the world knows that he can't control you, even though he supplies all your weapons, even though he pounds his chest and says that he saved you, that's what you've done to yourself. So this clip from J.D. Vance tells you everything you need to know. You ought to hate this man, Donald Trump. You ought to recognize that Donald Trump is Satan. You ought to recognize that Donald Trump is the great betrayer. You ought to recognize that Donald Trump is the most dangerous man in the history of the world and lethal to Israel. He's worse than Hitler, Stalin, the pharaohs, all of them combined. He's worse than Titus, Vespasian, and Hadrian. This is the most destructive man relative to Israel who has ever lived. He is demonic. He's an egomaniac. He's a psychopath. And he is the only head of state in the world. You put yourself in a position where only a demon-possessed psychopath will have anything to do with you. What does that say of you? Mm-hmm. And now you're pounding your chest, we'll stand up on our own when that same country supplies 60% of your weapons?
Good luck with that.
It's just revolting what you've done. I went onto social media to convey this message. 30,000 posts on X to convey this message to you. A similar number on Facebook to convey this message to you. Over and over and over again, reaching out to every Israeli influencer we could find. And you were defiant. You loved him. You acted like he was the second coming of Cyrus, like he was a great Messiah figure. You loved what you were doing in Gaza. You loved what you were doing in Lebanon. You loved your Iranian war when everything we said showed that it was impossible for you to eliminate their nuclear program, that you'd make it worse, that there was no chance you had to eliminate their missile program, you'd make it worse, that you couldn't win a war between interceptor and missile. The interceptor always loses. That you couldn't invade that country, you couldn't occupy that country, that going to war against Iran was just brain dead, and that regime change was never going to happen. And yet you went and you pushed it anyway. There's an analysis out by the New York Times. I posted it on this, and so it'll be on the Yahowah.com site. And while I wouldn't respect the New York Times for anything, the two journalists there claim to have conducted scores and scores of interviews with the cabinet members of Donald Trump leading up to this war. And what they say is that Bibi Netanyahu came to Washington in the weeks prior to February 28th of this year. And he laid out a plan where we're working together. Israel and the United States could achieve regime change in Iran, could destroy Iran's capability of developing a nuclear bomb, and would weaken their missile program. That was his sales pitch, that the U.S. could do that with Israel, and that we could be great heroes, and we would end the Iranian nuclear threat, and we would get a favorable government to Israel in the West by this joint maneuver. He left, and so there was a senior cabinet meeting, and Secretary of State Rubio said, "This doesn't make any sense. Don't do this. You're not going to get any of those goals." The CIA director said the idea of regime change in Iran is pure fantasy. It's not even worth discussing. It's just pure fantasy. Hegseth, of course, the alcoholic weekend talk show host, say, "Yay, man, let's go. War, war, war. I love war." And Eyeliner Boy said, "If your goal is regime change, do not do this. It's not going to happen. If your goal is that you want to weaken their ability to fight, then, go ahead. I'll support you if you decide to go." And then they all looked to Trump as if he were a god. He survived his assassination attempts. He's survived all manner of political storms. He's been convicted of felonies, and yet he's the president of the United States. And they said, do what you want to do. We'll support you. And he decided to do what he did. And the result was exactly as we said before it happened. You do this thing, and there's no way out. And we've been saying it now for months and months and months and months, years, that if you do this thing, you'll have to surrender. There is no way out. And I said, there's not a possibility that you can negotiate something that will be beneficial. There is literally no way out. Mm-hmm. This is devastating. And the memorandum of understanding is worse than Versailles. It's a complete and utter surrender. In fact, it's far worse than any surrender that I could have possibly have imagined. I mean, it's the terms are worse than the Treaty of Versailles. And the worst part of the whole thing is that by that agreement in paragraph 1 was checkmate against Israel. Israel put in a position there was no move left on the board. The state of Israel as we know it is over. It's over. I mean, literally, there's no recovery. You did this to yourself. And the only hope now is individual and return to Yahowah. That's it. Mm-hmm. But that speech by J.D. Vance It says it all, and it's true. Trump is it. And the United States is it in terms of their weapons. And they were checkmated by Iran to create this fissure between the two countries, because Trump always wanted to betray Israel. He wanted a way that he could pound his chest, as he did. He said yesterday, Israel only exists because of me. He says, because of me. Otherwise, Israel would not exist. That's an absolute lie. And it's not even just a little bit of a lie. It's he might as well have said, I'm the son.
Mm-hmm.
That's the scope of the lie. Not only didn't Iran threaten to nuke Israel, Iran would never nuke Israel. The very thing he claims that saved them from, it didn't save them from at all. It's not to say that Iran's nuclear program was peaceful. It wasn't. It was defensive. Their offensive program was the missiles and the drones, and they used them very effectively against America and Israel. And they used them more effectively against America than they did against Israel, because they realized that if they do that, Israel has to stand alone and the United States will withdraw. And they used them against the Strait of Hormuz. And it was devastating. It's such a horrendous miscalculation that people in positions of power like Netanyahu and Donald Trump could make such horrendous mistakes, unable to think through the consequences of their actions.
Yeah, and Iran doesn't even have to police the agreement. It's not like, hey, if Israel goes and goes further into Lebanon and bombs something or whatever, that Iran has to attack Israel. No. USA, you're the ones that have to go clean up that mess now. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, it's the deal is devastating for Israel and the world. The whole deal hinges on the United States bribing Iran with $325 billion to open the Strait of Hormuz. That's all they got. You open the Strait of Hormuz toll-free for 60 days for $325 billion, and then you can charge whatever you want to after that. And what Iran got was not only $325 billion, which is a fair amount of money, and in the United States, and a document saying that the Strait of Hormuz is your control going forward and all sanctions released from them. Well, those are good things. But what they got was checkmate on Israel. They destroyed Israel. There was a video that's further down here, and I don't know where it is in this list, but it's of an AI Scott Ritter. And there's another one of an AI Douglas McGregor. It doesn't matter. You don't need to play it. You don't even need to find it. The AI Scott Ritter goes and he talks about how what America didn't recognize was that by attacking Iran, that Iran would become the most formidable force in the Middle East, which is what they have. And he's right there. And that Iran did something that seemed impossible. They took the minority Shia Islam, which is 20% of Islam, and they made a Shia nation more powerful than any one of the Sunni nations, which is 80% of Islam. But they did. And they did that because of the United States and Israel bombing them. And he talked about the fortitude of them to stand up and to show the world that they were standing up. But here's the rub that Scott Ritter completely missed. He says that they stood up to protect the Palestinians in Gaza, and they showed that was their motivation. Their motivation was to stand up on behalf of the Palestinian in Gaza when the Arab dictators wouldn't do so. And, this is a person who makes a living by conveying his opinions. And it couldn't be any further from the truth. First of all, Hamas is a Qatari interest. When you read all of Sinwar's letters, does he ever mention Iran? Nope. Hamas wasn't Iranian. And so that is just brain dead. And the entire Islamic world is using Gazan Muslims, the so-called Palestinians, as pawns, just like America and Europe are using Ukrainians as cannon fodder. They exist as pawns to play against Israel. And so Iran didn't stand up for Gazans. They could care less about the Gazans. They want the Gazans as they are, impoverished and their community destroyed because it weakens Israel. They're just a pawn. No. Iran rallied around two things: their Persian heritage and the Islamic religion. And they did overpower all of the Arab Sunni despots there with their fancy dresses and all their palaces and fancy yachts and all that sort of thing. To the average Muslim now, the Arab despots have no credibility. MBS is done. They're all done. The Emir, they're all gone. They have lost all credibility, and they don't have the resources anymore to play. And they're now vassals of Iran, who came out morally superior from an Islamic point of view. But Scott Ritter, you were completely wrong. They didn't do this for the so-called Fakistinians. There is no such thing as a Palestinian. And they are universally hated in all of the Islamic capitals. They know who they are. They're nothing but cannon fodder. And then you had Douglas MacArthur, or what's his name? McGregor, Douglas McGregor. I have listened to him for the last time. I'll never listen to him again. There's a post from him that is so vile. He goes into, he decides he's going to tell us his conspiracy theory. And it's his conspiracy theory for World War II. And his conspiracy theory for World War II is that the Jews decided they wanted the war with Germany because they wanted to make lots of money. And so they thought that they could buy the alcoholic Churchill and control Churchill, who was an alcoholic and broke, and enough money from the Jews, they would do that. And that Roosevelt bought into this scheme that he could make lots of money by starting a war against Germany, and that the bankers that were all Jewish convinced FDR that a war against Germany would be really profitable for him. And this was his conspiracy. It's akin to the protocols of the elders of Zion. It was to hear him present his theory on World War II. And to blame it all on Jews just tells you everything you need to know about that sorry soul who is now hellbound. I will never, ever, ever listen to him again. And Scott Ritter, you were right about Iran's rise. You just don't know what the motivation was, and you were completely wrong. It's a real shame what's happened to this world. But the biggest shame of all is what's happened to Israel and how Israel has been checkmated. The state of Israel is done. Doesn't matter what you vote for. Doesn't matter if finally you realize the Haredi are parasites and you do away with them. You quarantine them, you stop giving them money, which be very difficult to do in Israel, or that you convince the Marxists in Tel Aviv that there's something more important than their sexual orientation. It's just over. You have no weapons supplier. You have no ally. You have a whole world that's against you. And you did this to yourselves, and you were played into a position where it's checkmate. So Israel, you're now in the time of trouble, and you're completely isolated. There's a single hope. Turn to yahowah.com and start reading. And don't stop. That's your only hope. Yahowah.com. Start reading. Doesn't even matter where you start. Just start. and read every night. And there'll be hope for you individually.
Heck, we're even reading it to you. So show up tonight for the family hour, and we'll read it to you.
We'll read it to you. We'll sing it to you. We'll read it to you.
Uh-huh.
But it'll be a family hour tonight. Thank you, JB. Man, I love having you on the program. It's there's something highly satisfying knowing that you have such a long history with somebody who is resolutely rational, who loves to search for evidence and will apply strict rules of logic, who has even engaged in doing what has driven our message from the beginning, which is translation, and looking at the oldest manuscripts and actually having a hand at it and seeing really what goes into it. It's not easy to do. And there's something even more important than translation. And that is when you then try to explain it to people, because it's the explanation that has the power, helping people understand it. And you've even gone into that as well. And you've cataloged where we have been all along the way. And as you know, Richard here is here largely because of your site.
Yep. I listened and listened and listened, and that I broadcast after broadcast, rereading Introduction to God 3 times.
Yeah, I never had any broadcasts on my site, but you did. And people that had heard me on one radio show said, "I want to hear more and more and more and more." And you had the books there, you had the broadcast there, you had an open discussion with people there, and for a while, Richard McCord did as well. And between the two, you facilitated a very significant number of the people who have grown with us into this covenant family, and everybody has come the same way: reading, learning, investigating, verifying, thinking. And it's what Israel must do now if they're going to, Israel's not going to survive, but if there's going to be a surviving remnant, and there will be Israelites who will be part of the next 2 harvests. This is the only way to do that. And somewhere deep down now, you got to know that you're in a pickle, and there's no way out of this one. As you now have these last few days, you've tried to engage the Israeli posters that I scolded for the last 2 years and told them this was what they were headed towards. Do you have any of them that are admitting, we really screwed up, we're in a terrible spot?
I'm seeing a few now, but they're small potatoes, 500, people. But, I commented to Lisa Rosen again this morning. I'm still going to do the I told you so tour for a little while.
Absolutely.
Everybody should do the I told you so tour.
Yeah. We all should do it because we told them so. And now it is so. And it's not just so in a subtle way. It's not just so in a way, we've survived other things. We'll survive this too.
Mm-hmm.
No,
that's their attitude. It's we're go at it alone.
No. This is checkmate. There is no going at it alone. You're in a world where you don't make enough of your weapon systems, and your economy is not independent. You are totally dependent on the United States, and the United States is now run by a psychopath who is demon possessed. And he is on record through the prophets committed to the betrayal of Israel. And that's the person that you have allowed to determine your fate. And he has, and it's over. So Israel, another squadron of F-35s is not going to make any difference. In fact, it's going to make things worse for you. Another election is not going to make any difference. Legislative.
At this point is for individuals.
Yeah, all there is now is hope for individuals. There is no hope for the state of Israel. It is over. No political solution, no religious solution, no cultural solution. It's literally over. And Jews, you're going to have to realize that there's no such thing as a Jew. It's a bogus name. There's no history of a people called Jews. You can be Israelites, and you need to know what side of the coin you're going to be on, because Yisrael means both those who contend and struggle with God and those who engage and endure with God. And you've got to make which side of that you're going to be on. And you need to return to being Yehudim, which is a compound of Yahweh's name and Dod's name, and means Yahweh's beloved. And if you shirk this horrible name Jew and you re-embrace Yehud, and in the plural Yehudim, and understand the right side of Yisrael, you recognize who Yahweh is and who his beloved son is, who your Messiah is, who your king is. And it's not that fraud that you promoted through the Rabbi Paul. It's Dod. He's your king. He's the one who's returning. He's your savior. He's the one who fulfilled Pesach Matzah B'Kodem. And you know nothing of this. You need to start reading. The truth has always been there. You've been blinded to it because you've been so obnoxious. And now it's over. Now, you can say, well, I don't live in the state of Israel, so it's no big deal to me. What happened the last time anti-Semitism was at this level and there was no state of Israel? Do I have to remind you?
6 million. Mm-hmm.
So you need to care and care deeply. All right, gentlemen, we'll be back together tonight for Family Hour, 6 o'clock Eastern time. Look forward to being able to do that. We're not going to have happy news for Israel for the next 7 years. This is the time of Israel's troubles. Began on May 22nd with Shabuah of this year, and it continues all the way to Teruah in 2033, which is year 6,000 Yah. And so everything we're going to report is going to be affirmations that what we have conveyed to you is true. The hope is, the positive is, listen to what we have to say. We don't want anything from you. Open ears and an open mind would be a great thing. And then come to know the truth. Do what JB did. Do what Kevin did. Do what Rich did. Read. Challenge. I give you the ability to challenge every translation. The generic form of the words there for you to look up. And you can say, I don't need any damn translation. I speak Hebrew. Well, that doesn't help you. That's modern Hebrew is as distant from the language in the Torah as Latin is from Italian. So that won't do you any good. You don't know anything about your stems. You don't know anything about the conjugations. You don't know anything about your moods. And you've corrupted the language so badly based upon the rabbinical malfeasance, and your vocabulary is a blend of a tiny slice of misappropriated, misconstrued Torah, stripped of their real meaning of those words, blended with a large dose of Talmud, a lot of Yiddish, and English as you move into the modern age. And so, you can't even transliterate the words correctly in Hebrew. You're applying the wrong letters, and the letters have meaning, and you're representing them incorrectly. So yes, you do need it translated. That's the only way you're going to ever understand it. And the fact is, the more of you speak English than any other language in the world anyway. Why it's written this way. So thank you. JB, it's always a great pleasure. Say hello to Patty for me. And will I see you this evening? Are you on the rotation for this evening?
I believe so.
Okay. We'll see you later this evening. Thank you for participating. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. And thank you to the herd of dogs that I either went inside or went out. Talk to you later, my friends. Bye.
Hey there, thanks for tuning in. That was Fetch. Gotta run now. Catch y'all on our next podcast.